Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our October 28th, 2024 Board of County Commission members strategic planning meeting. It is 9 o'clock. Let the record reflect that we have Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner French, Commissioner Jordan, and Commissioner Cuny. And in the conference room, Commissioner Waldrop is at a conference, and so she will not be joining us today. With that, though, we are going to go ahead and get started with Rob from the airport and get a budget presentation from the Spokane International Airport to start our budget day.
Start the budget day, it sounds like. Yeah. And I think Larry just joined. He wanted to do just a quick intro, so we'll see if he has joined us. There he is.
Good morning. Pardon me. Well, thank you. I'm sorry I can't join you in person. I just want to start out just very quickly just by thanking Commissioner Cuny for her work last week at our bond sale. Went very well. And I'm not sure if Randy's in the room at this point, but hi, Randy. I also want to say thanks to Randy as well as our entire team. Everything went very well. We were able to sell the bonds well within the parameters that we had established. And we're excited to get that funding moving forward and put into the project. So just again, thank you to Chair Cuny for your help last week. And I think it was a really good outcome.
I think it was a good outcome, and it was really exciting to know that you guys are just getting to move forward and, continue with your construction projects. So that'll be great for our community. So thank you for all you're doing.
Absolutely. And just to tee up the budget really quick, probably one of the biggest changes in the budget that we haven't had in quite a long time that Rob will go through is the fact that we'll be adding debt service to the budget for the first time in quite a long time. And I think the other, as I recall last year, I think Commissioner Jordan had asked about positions and how we're doing with filling positions. And this year we've taken a bit more conservative approach on positions. I think that you'll see as Rob goes through the budget, we still have a fair amount of positions that will be open. But again, it's not quite as many as we have been carrying in previous budget years. We'll talk through the slides, and I'll be happy to supplement any of the comments that Rob will provide, and happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have as we go through it.
Great.
Very good. Thank you, Larry. We'll go ahead and get started with the budget on here. And so one of the things that you'll see as this is we are not requesting any funding from the county. It's typical for this. So it's really a key or pillar of airports is be financially self-sufficient. So funds come from system users only, so that we're not asking for any tax dollars related to our 2025 budget. What you'll see on here is just a real quick summary of a couple of our highest operating revenue sources that we have. This is really in order, so on there, and so parking, ground transportation fees are the highest operating revenue that the airport receives from that in terms of that activity. We have tenant rents, landing fees. Those are mostly from the airlines or airline partners. Rental car activity, it is considered to be a concession lease that we have with there, so we do get a portion or percentage of their overall gross sales. And then the other one that has become really large for us is concession revenue. That's not just in terminal, that also includes any kind of retail as well as hotels. And we have now 3 hotels at the airport, as folks know. And that also generates a good amount of operating income for us. I won't go through all the capital projects revenues, because we will get to that a little bit later in the presentation, but those are some major funding sources. So we have some federal grants. We have some restricted uses in terms of our passenger facility charge and customer facility charge. We'll go through that in greater detail in terms of what those are funding and how much that is generating on an annual basis, or at least for the 2025 budget for us. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And so what we are going to do is summarize this. And there's a lot of information on this, but we did a couple circles in terms of information that we wanted to highlight on this. So this is 2022 to 2025 activity. So we'll have 2022 and 2023 actuals. We're about estimate for the rest of 2024, and we'll talk about what we have in 25. The left-hand side is our employment activity. It's a really key metric for us in terms of airport. It is that driver of all activity for us on there. And so what we are looking at is about a 3% increase year over year compared to 2023. Right now, through September, we are 3.3% above in terms of our activity. And so we are just being a little conservative. We hope we can obviously stay well above the 3%. But again, we want to be a little conservative with our assumptions for 24 as we wound out the year. So that's our assumption for there in terms of activity. For 2025 budget, we are anticipating a 2.4% increase. That'll bring our employment activity to just below 2.2 million. So overall, that'll bring our activity to about 4.4 million passengers overall going through the airport on there. Our employment deployment activity is roughly 50-50. So you basically double that number and that gets us our total passengers. We are anticipating 2023 is our record year right now. 24, we believe will surpass that. And 25 will set another record year, we hope. On the right-hand side is landed weight. That's a really key metric for us. It talks about activity, our operations, the type of aircraft that are coming into the airport. So really talks about the partners that we have with the airlines and how they are looking at overall in terms of the airport, our activity on there. And the lower right-hand side, it's a little hard to see. I think the page has got in there, but it's a 2% increase over 2024 activity. So we are anticipating some additional activity in landed weights. And again, that drives not just operating revenue, but a number of operations and the type of aircraft and just seat capacity overall for us. So that's a really key metric for us as well in terms of what we're looking at. Commissioner Jordan?
What do you attribute the negative 2.1% to for this year so far?
For this year, it's related to cargo activity. So passenger carriers are up about 2.5% year to date right now, but cargo landed weight is down about 15%. That's something we've seen with similar size airports across the country. So we had our peak really during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, and then it's just started to soften a little bit. So the activity, essentially a type of aircraft coming in are a little bit smaller than what we had a couple of years ago, again, because the volume is just a little bit decreased from what we saw a couple of years ago. So we saw that adjustment in 24 is when that is occurring, and then we'll have just a very slight increase in 25. But again, it's sort of that sort of resetting where that market is, if you will, in terms of our cargo one. Again, it's cargo landed weight that really is driving that decrease. Thank you for that question. If we can move on to the next slide. And so this is really key slide for us. It talks about our operating and non-operating. There's really two components to that. On the left-hand side, we'll talk about that. The first one on the far left is our customer facility charge. That is collected from rental cars. That's on a per transaction day. And that's a restricted use. It can only go to support rental car activities and facility at the airport itself. We have a large project in the budget for 2025, as you'll see, but a key funding source for us to make sure that we have the proper facilities for rental car activity at the airport. The next one over, as you move from left to right, is our passenger facility charge. That is collected on every ticket or plane passenger that leaves Spokane. It's collected at the rate there. You see the total annual amount, a little over $8 million for that. And again, it's a very restricted use on there. We actually have to apply with FAA to use that. So there's really 5 pillars in terms of passenger facility charge uses for that. And again, it's something we have to go through FAA for approval on. The next one is operating grants. You can see the dollar amount there associated with that. Essentially what that is essentially it's our airport improvement program. It's the bipartisan infrastructure law. Those kind of generate there. All of that is going to capital projects, and it's a really key funding source for the airport in terms of being able to do some of our capital projects. I won't go through all of the detail on the right-hand side or there. That's really our inflows and outflows. So the inflows are in green, the outflows are in red. A couple just real quick notes on here. What you'll see on the right-hand side is we added debt service, as Larry mentioned. This first time we've had debt service in that outflow, if you will. About a little over $6.2 million for that in terms of what we are anticipating and budgeting for that based on pricing that we got last week for those bonds. What that also does, as you start to go kind of down toward the middle there as it comes together, you'll see some the surplus there. One of the notes about the surplus in that surplus goes to fund our capital program. It also can go to cash reserves, make sure we have the proper reserves. The other piece that it goes to is it goes to cash fund some of our program that we have for capital. Really key piece for that because not everything is grant funded or PFC funded or debt. There's a component that the airport fronts, then we get reimbursement from the airlines over a period of time. If we could go on to the next slide, we will look at our budget highlights. And so this looks at our operating revenues and expenses. So you can see the total revenue, 63.2 million. That's about a 10.3% increase over 2024. A couple of different main reasons why that is one, we anticipate an improvement in terminal concessions and parking. Terminal concessions, as folks know, we have a changeover in operator in 2024 earlier this year. We went through a new concepts that are coming into the airport. Those are starting to come in on 2025. So what we'll see is those local concepts that are really key for us in terms of that component. That is going to start generating some additional revenue for us just because we believe that activity is going to have, we're going to have more activity, more people dining, buying stuff at the airport than what under the previous concepts. So again, that refresh concepts, local concept, we think is going to go really, really well for us. We are also looking at a parking rate increase overall for all parking products across that. Part of that is demand management. Part of that is also helping offset some of the debt service that we are incurring in 2025 for that. And then additionally, the airline revenue component will also increase. That's based on some rates, charges that we have, as well as leased premises. When I say leased premises, essentially with that terminal expansion we did on the west side, that has increased the amount of square footage related in the terminal. That is also driving up a little bit of that revenue that we're going to get from the airlines as well. For operating expenses, you can see the total there, 54.3 million. It's a 29.3% increase over 2024 budgeted expenses. I know that sounds like a really big number, but half of that number is debt service. That 6.3 million that we're looking at, that accounts for 14% of that 29. So essentially half of that number relates to debt service. The other component that you'll see on there, as Larry mentioned this, is we do have a budgeted staffing level increase, but that's from current staffing levels on there. What we did compared to the 24 budget is we just softened that budget a little bit for staffing. Again, just knowing the time that it takes to hire folks, we are down from budgeted levels, but up from our current, if that makes any sense for that. We anticipate a heavier year for snow and de-icing. So this is going to be a La Nina year on there. And so it's a little bit increase from what we saw last year on there. The other component that I mentioned is terminal expansion. What that also does is going to increase our operating expenses related to that. So that's utilities, water, sewer, things, as well as custodial utilities just in general for that. So we're going to see an increase in costs related to that terminal expansion as well for those components. That's what's really driving that 29% component is those really main items that I just talked about. I'll pause just for a second, see if there's any questions.
Just one.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure I speak for many people when I say I really enjoyed the relatively inexpensive parking at the airport. Just wondering kind of what the process looks like for setting parking rates and how you think about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we do a couple of different things for us. One, we compare to, well, really three different things I'll say. One, we compare to rates that are downtown, just in terms of what order the garage is downtown, what those rates are as a comparable for us. We also look at other similar size airports in terms of where their rates are for all parking products. So we'll look at somebody that has a garage, a close in outside, as well as an economy shuttle. Look at where those rates are and take into account in terms of what they're doing and where their rates are and how we compare to those. The other component that we look at too is what's the cost of a ground transportation provider. So what does it cost to take a round trip on an Uber or a Lyft out to the airport? We want to make sure we stay under those rates as much as we can on there. And so while we talk about a rate increase, the overall rate increase is $2 for the garage and $1 for the rest of the ones. So we're still looking at an economy of $7 per day. So an average stay is about 7 days. And so you're looking at a $49 one, but we think that's well under what you could get from an Uber or Lyft out to there. And so again, we're trying to be very cautious about what we do with the rates, be very mindful of what, not just other airports, but other, I would say other options, transportation options out to the airport, use that as comparable as well.
What's the time frame for that taking effect?
That would be January 1st, 2025.
Thank you.
Good. If we can move on to the next slide. And there are capital programs that we have for 2025. So similar to what we saw in 2024, it is a rather substantial capital program for the airport. We're looking at a little bit below $150 million overall for the year. And so I'll go through these at rather high level, but if you have any questions as I'm going through here, please let me know. In terms of PFC funds, we are looking at utilizing about 5.1 million of that. That's going to go to Concourse C Trucks program, as well as some equipment vehicle acquisitions. We did a new firefighting vehicle, as well as some snow de-icing equipment as well. As folks know, as Larry mentioned earlier, and Commissioner Cutie was part of last week, did a debt issuance through the county. And so part of that is going to be PFC supported or passenger facility charge supported. The other stuff will actually impact the rate base for that. So about $67 million for that, and that's going to go to Concourse C construction, the administrative building, as well as our fuel facility expansion as well, which is another really key project for us in terms of adding capacity and storage capacity for fuel. For customer facility charge, we have a ground transportation improvement phase 3 of that program. And so we are going to do some improvements to the rental car facility area and make it just more user-friendly, update the bathrooms, essentially make it more user in terms of the ingress, egress out of that area, as well as add some additional areas for people to not necessarily be in the elements outside of that area behind there in the winter months. Operating cash, as I talked about in that 2 slides ago, in terms of really key fees for in terms of that surplus funding, is airport funded capital projects. You can see the list there. It's a pretty numerous list. So landside projects, those are typically parking improvements that we'll do. We have some matching funds that we have to have for some of the reconstruction we're doing on some of the taxiways, IT infrastructure, as well as equipment vehicle acquisitions that we do. And then federal and state grants, we have a total of about 42.2 million. And again, that goes to the Concourse C program, as well as Spotted Road realignment, which we are getting started on the design phase of Spotted Road. Really key project for us as well for there, as well as a little bit of the rail truck transload as well. So a total of about 148.8 million is what we're asking for. And again, you can see some of those projects that are on there. Really big key projects for us in terms of keeping the airport moving forward, as well as our supporting infrastructure as well. If we can move on to the next slide. This is our budget summary. So this rolls up our operating and capital expenses. You can see the operating on the left-hand side, capital on the lower right-hand side. Overall, we're asking for 215.7 million in terms of consolidated budget. That is for the Spokane International Airport, the Airport Business Park, as well as Phelps Field. And again, you can see the breakdown between the operating and capital there. That is about a 16.7% increase overall from last year. Again, we covered most of that already. Part of that is debt service. Part of that is just some increased costs related to some of the terminal expansion. Social costs associated with that, as well as some budgeted staffing levels that we're going to look for in 2025, and hopefully fill in 2025. So with that, that is the last slide. Went through a lot of info pretty quickly, but if there's any questions, happy to answer those now.
Very informative. Great job. He was working on this when we were back last week. So
Yes, we did have some discussions last week, Commissioner Cutie, on that.
So no, I think I know it's just exciting. I mean, Al, you're on the board. I've seen Max is on the board. It's just exciting what you guys are doing, and you are the gateway to our community, and so it's so important, and you guys really show off Spokane Way. So, Larry, thank you for everything you're doing to do that. And again, as we were talking back in New York, that this is a budget that it's a joint operation between the city and the county that own it, but we're not funding it. You guys are doing everything you need to do yourselves to be self-sufficient, and so that's very exciting, and very happy for what you do.
Just one quick clarification. I'm just looking at the list of grants and the capital improvement program. So where it says discretionary, those are competitive grants, right?
Yes, there's really 2 different types. We talk about discretionary. One is just FAA funded, so that's through the airport improvement program. And then the other one is through the bipartisan infrastructure law. There is a competitive grant program associated with that as well. And folks may have received the notification last week. We were awarded $2 million as part of year 4 of that. And we will be applying for year 5 as well on that. And timing is unknown on that at this point in time, but sometime in 25, we will apply for year 5 of that program as well. That is right now, that's at least the last year of the program for the bipartisan infrastructure law. That is what we mean when we say discretionary, is that competitive program.
We've all said it before, but just congratulations on taking such good advantage of all those opportunities. It's exciting.
Very exciting. And I think if folks have been out to the airport, that Concourse C really is, it looks amazing. I think people are sort of wowed by it when they get off. Whenever I'm out in that area, I hear people talking about it. I think they struggle to sort of think this is an airport, right? Like, it just seems like it's a different environment there for it. And we are very much looking forward to getting the rest of the gates in, all 9 gates here soon. Toward the end of 2025, we'll be close to being done with that expansion program. So very exciting time for us at the airport.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Crowder? Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Gotta get back to that Zoom, you know, you normally you're in
Yeah,
person.
sorry, I apologize. I just wanted to express our appreciation for the teamwork that we have with the commissioners. We work really hard to remain financially self-sufficient and to deliver over $3 billion of economic benefit to the community. And we could not do that if we did not have your support. So we just appreciate deeply the support and teamwork that we have with the commissioners and with the county staff.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
I'm
very
glad
much.
we were able to make this all work, so yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks so
Okay,
much.
you guys have a
Appreciate
great
your time.
day.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, so I see we got Randy is up next. But guys, I see we have someone new in the room.
Oh, hi, yeah, I'm Matt Folsom. I'm the chief civil deputy. I was here last week and introduced
Oh.
myself.
Very good.
Sorry,
You know, sorry, I was not here.
No, that's
so-
okay. We saw you zoom in at the 2 o'clock.
Well, very nice to meet you. Very good.
Sorry, Commissioner.
It's, you know, things change. You're just gone for a week to sell bonds and nothing's the same when you come back, right? So Randy and Tessa, I'll let you guys take it away.
Okay, good morning, commissioners. Just wanna, Doug's here today to talk about some park projects. But just before we get into that, just wanted to give you an update of where REAP 1 and REAP 2 are at. This is part of your packet, the online packet, but we also did give you printouts today of those 2 sheets.
It's not part of the agenda that Gina sends out. It's
Oh.
part of our shared folder.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you.
It's in our shared folder in the capital folder. With all the rest of the capital project asks, some of which Doug will be referencing in his presentation.
So on the REAP 1 and REAP 2, they're just sheets look like that. REAP 1, you can see for 25 through, we projected 25 through 30 on there. And this sheet shows all the committed items for REAP 1 right now. So we've got the fairground debt that goes out, ends in 33. The scrap debt ends in 34, small arms range ends in 42. So these are the commitments that we've made out of REAP 1 for the next 6 years. And then we also have, right now, we're assuming about a $3.5 million per year revenue. Again, this comes through the real estate excise tax, number 1. Number 2, and so that would leave us about an annual capacity of about $2.8 million.
Wrong one.
Oops, sorry. Looking at the wrong sheet, about $1.6 million, excuse me. And we do have a balance in there. So we've got about $6 million of capacity right now. That leaves us with a consistent amount of about 3.7 in there. And that's because that's 2 years of debt service. So we always wanted to have some reserve in case the revenue tails off. So that's why we're just suggesting that you leave a couple years of debt service in there. But that gives you about 6 million capacity and about 1.6 a year that you could commit to something else. Again, REIT 1 can be used for more things than REIT 2. So REIT 1 can be used for parks, but it can also be used for a lot of the buildings that we do here at the campus and things like that. The second sheet is for REIT 2. That is more restricted. Pretty much can be only used for Doug's parks. Again, REIT 1 and REIT 2, we should be about the same revenue per year. It's the same, the tax is the same amount. We've only got two items that we currently project out. We do about 100,000 a year in park repairs. And we have debt service on the golf, and that ends in 28. Excuse me. So right now our annual capacity is about 2.9 million with what we collect over what we're currently committed to. That goes up in 29 to 3.4 because that's when the debt service for the golf tails off. And then we have about 2.5 million in just call it excess fund balance over what we have done in the past. Again, we are suggesting leaving 2 years of debt service or park repairs in there. So that's $1.2 million. But that does give us about $3 million plus 2.5 that can go forward. So that is just looking out 6 years. Again, there's a lot of requests against these. We have not, until the commissioners say, yes, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We haven't assigned any dollars in 25 and out. We have put in here what you did approve in 24, and some of this maybe not be totally spent yet, but we did put those monies in 24 column, but we've made no assumptions for 25. Doug has a lot of requests. And so probably let Doug go next. Any other questions? Did you have any questions before we let Doug go?
No.
Commissioner Jordan. Is there a connection that's specific between REIT and the capital facilities plan and in the comp plan world? And what is that connection? And so how does that restrict our discretion on a yearly basis?
In the capital facilities plan, that's part of the comp plan, we put together what we need to do because we have levels of service. Like you have to have so many parks, so many policemen, things like that. But we have to tie it to what revenue source is there. We can't say we're going to spend $50 million in REIT 2, but we only bring in 20. We can't do that. So when we went through that last year, we had to balance out what globally over the next 6 years, what could REIT support, what could other funds support.
And then a project must be listed on our annual 6-year plan that we incorporate into our budget adoption. If a project is not listed on there as being funded by REIT 1 or REIT 2, it is not eligible for that funding source without an amendment of that 6-year plan.
And we can only do 2 changes to the 6-year plan. One is a mid-year change, and the second change is always done at the end of the year when we adopt the budget and the 6-year CIP.
Madam Chair, when the board holds your public hearing on adopting your 2025 budget on the first meeting in December, at the same time, we will modify our capital facility plan to be consistent with our capital improvement plan that we've talked about here, so that we can expend REIT dollars lawfully. So that's when we will do it. And that's part of your public hearing, which has been advertised. And we do this annually in the same way, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And just a clarification, so the committed projects, are those already listed connected with the comp of the capital facilities and the CIP then.
Yes, so when we did the budget last year and we said what the 24 projects were and those that were being done out of potentially REAP 1 or 2, yes, those were part of that CFP.
But Commissioner, in response to your question, if we're going to modify that for 2025 and modify the capital improvement plan, that will be in the approved resolution for the budget. And so we will be modifying the sheets that you've seen right here to include whatever projects the county commissioners direct want to come out of REAP 1 and 2 respectively.
Correct.
Is that not correct?
That is correct, which gets us to the big sheet where we are saying, here's all the projects, which ones are we going to say yes to for 25? And what is the funding source? Because if it's REAP 1 or 2, we will make a note of that on here, which will be part of the budget adoption process. So I think we'll go to Doug next, and then after that, we'll come back and we just want to talk about future additional potentially budget sessions also, because time is getting short as we get closer to December 2nd. And I know there's a lot going on at the end of November this year, so we'll let Doug go now.
Skip.
Yes.
Not wrong.
Yeah, Thanksgiving comes around every running streak.
Good morning. Rod, I think I have a presentation speaking to our 6-year CIP for the next 6 years. That is the other one. That's the next one. Got a couple of leads. Here we go. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. And as Randy outlined, we have a 6-year capital improvement plan, and we enjoy updating that annually. And you might recall a few months back, we actually submit this in July. So we started working on this next round quite some time ago. We made some predictions that we'll be talking about here, some of them fairly accurate. Which is always exciting, but what we very quickly realized back in July when we were working on updating this is that we have several projects that were taking a little bit more time, and we had much better cost information. And so we effectively, in July earlier this year, we looked carefully at the current adopted 6-year CIP, particularly the amount that had been allocated for 2025, and we effectively reshuffled our projects to reflect capacity, demand, and current needs. And so with that in mind, we looked at keeping that overall amount in our 2025 request that was included within the 2024 adopted, as we're looking at these to try to stay within again, within a reasonable supply side.
I would mention that you never adopted the 25 formally. That was a request, but we did not adopt anything for 25.
Sure, sure.
We only did the 24. So that's why it's important to also have that REAP 2 sheet, to make sure we can fit inside of that also. So, but yes, Doug is moving stuff around.
And again, we're looking from a planning standpoint, we're trying to be consistent with our planning is really the point, recognizing that you truly fund 1 year at a time. And so that was our starting point in looking at where we were at with projects, demands. We're again always looking ahead with the 6-year plan. And with that, we have listed these items in priority. And for the 25 year, we have individual slides, so I'll go ahead and just work through them. Next slide, please. You might recall our Shields Park. We're again partnering with the city of Spokane. We visited with you earlier this year, and this was an example where you were able to make a commitment upcoming so that we'll be able to complete this project, and again, utilizing much better information. Next slide, please. We'll be speaking more to this, but in the very first slide, we submitted 1.6 million. Again, I'll be proposing to shuffle slightly between Camas, what we submitted for Camas, which will be the next slide, and this one. And we'll come back and speak in great detail to this here shortly. Next slide, please. And this is Camas. We've listed 1 million in July when we submitted, and with our crystal ball, we had put in 1.1. And again, we'll speak to this in more detail shortly, but we'll only ask for 1 million here. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, the asterisk we have, we're always trying to plan, again, multi-year out, looking at potential grant funding and opportunity. So this particular one relates to a planning cycle for grants where we're looking to get design and construction documents completed in anticipation of a grant round down the road. And again, this is working to implement a phase within our Liberty Lake Regional Park Master Plan, specific to the campground area. Next slide, please. This is specific to surfacing, pool plaster and tile surfacing replacement and repairs as needed. We've been able to do a couple sections in advance, so it wouldn't be the entire pool surface because a few areas we have been able to complete in advance, and this is what we're estimating is needed for the remaining areas within the 2 sites at our 2 aquatic facilities to keep us again in good shape and operational. Next slide, please. Fish Lake Regional Park, we're again looking ahead. We'll be hopefully be back. We've been working away very diligently with the seller out there, and again, we're looking multi-years ahead. This would lead to future rounds of grants, and we believe we'll be in a good position next year to complete an updated master plan that will hopefully include some additional property out there between now and next year. Next slide, please. And this is a very important piece. Every 6 years, we're required to have an updated park recreation and open space plan to remain grant eligible. So all of these different grants that we enjoy pursuing, we need to be current, and we are getting ready to embark on that process. And it would be very helpful to have some funding to help with that process. We've already begun coordinating a little bit with our planning department. I know they've received some funds. We've talked to them. They'd like to keep their funds to complete their comprehensive plan update, but potentially we could coordinate with them, and this could be very helpful to the public participation process and certain elements within that plan, given the load that we're carrying with capital projects and so forth. So we're looking to begin that process here late this year, early next year, with the goal of having that plan before you not later than November of next year, so that we can we have till the end of next year to have that updated plan in place. So there's some funds requested to assist with that process. Next slide, please. Oh, yes.
Aren't you there? So Scott, would you be working with planning to help the coordination between the 2?
Would I be related to this thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be getting that updated into our comp plan that's coming up here.
Right, so when additional staff that we've hired and stuff, and we'd be able to kind of.
We have to figure out if they've got the capacity to be able to take that on, yeah. I mean, that's part of their efforts are to update the plan, so I just don't know whether this specific one was actually in there,
Okay,
this effort. Yeah, so I'll find out.
so, okay, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our sense is they're eager to coordinate with us, but their assistance may be limited in our conversations, but we'll again continue those conversations. Next slide, please. And this is a particular project that came to our attention this year out at Pine River, our Pine River Park. We've had a stretch of the shoreline somewhat loved to death by in large part children that really enjoy digging in the sand, and over time it's created some significant erosion concerns. I know Ron Valencia is familiar with this, as he helped relay the citizen concerns, and we went out there and they were very, very valid concerns. So we've been doing some work. This is a small little project that's popped up where we hope to address that and mitigate the erosion before it goes much further. And so this is a little project where we request a little bit of funding that would allow us to do that.
Where is Pine River Park?
It's up north.
It's part of the Little Spokane River.
Okay.
Yeah, near Glen Eden Park, and not far from the golf course up there.
And Ron has been told to stop digging, so. He won't do it anymore.
Yes, the community is always surprised to learn we can't just go in there with a couple dump trucks full of sand and just dump them down. There are very, very specific and extensive regulations and guidelines that we must follow when doing any work within the shorelines. And we've obviously done some preliminary work here to identify that and outline this little project for, again, it would be some erosion mitigation and try to position it to discourage that from happening in the future. Next slide, please. And this, we're looking at our building and where they're working away. And we've requested a few dollars, and I apologize, REIT 2 is not eligible for that. That's my mistake. I think we have REIT 1 or general fund. So I apologize for that up there. But we are chipping away on that. We currently do not have any funds identified to help with moving, furnishings, or any technology updates. There's a photo where we are due for some furniture. We are working on some donated furniture. We're not exactly sure where we're going to land there, but we're pursuing an opportunity there that could help with this. But we are requesting a few dollars. We're on track, I believe, to look at moving into that in January, February of 25. So we're looking forward to that and excited for that opportunity and move. Next slide, please. And that is wrapped up for 2025. And again, a lot of these projects are multi-year in sequencing. And so we have several identified in 26. And I'll go ahead and go through the next slide. I'll just jump through the years. And I can certainly come back and go through in more depth if there's any interest. Again, 2027. So you'll see we are anticipating sequencing and potential competitive grants that we chase after that can play into this. So 2027 assumes success with a grant in the prior year for Fish Lake. Bear Lake, we're queuing up again, design and construction, and we're trying to be very strategic where we're completing that design and construction documents 1 year before locking in the funding amount the next year and pursuing grants so that we ideally have much better figures to work with. And so that's a theme through all of these years with several different projects. And with the park recreation open space plan being formally updated next year, it could absolutely affect what some of these future years look like. Because we always look ahead in that plan. Next slide, please. 2028. And the list, as we get a little further out, the list gets a little bit smaller. It gets a little more difficult, but we are again always looking ahead. Next slide, please. Just a little bit smaller. And a lot of multi-year projects where we're working. A lot of projects are spread out in multi-year, recognizing limitations on funding and a goal of acquiring and competing for grants to help stretch the funding that we have. And so again, that's a theme in any year that you see. Next slide, please. And 2030. Okay. And next slide. There we go. Happy to answer any questions. I don't know, Ron, it might be helpful to go to the very first one that just lines out 2025, because I know that is most significant in terms of the capital improvement budget. And I'll be excited to speak in more detail to Camus and plans, but I'm very happy to speak to any of these projects and answer any questions.
So towards the end, it showed the Gateway Park. What is the Gateway
Yeah,
Park?
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I'm not familiar with.
Oh, Gateway Park is right at the Idaho-Washington state line there. Just before you reach Liberty Lake on the
And it's
on the
called
north-
It's
on the-
called Gateway Park?
Yes, it is
Oh.
called Gateway Park. We have a contract with Washington State where we lease a part of an old rest area. We own quite a bit of property there, a combination of traditional parkland and conservation futures property together along the river, along the Centennial Trail. And we have identified in the future an opportunity or a need to do a master plan out there as we look much further out.
There's a truckway station out there, very close to that. Actually, it's between that and the river.
Yes, I do. Yeah, yes.
Okay, well, Doug, we may have to put that on a list to do a little field trip so I can see it since it's in my district.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Well, it's been there. We've just had a lot of other excitement in your district and in others. But you bet, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be good to see. Okay.
I can certainly tell you in 26, the Holmberg Dog Park, people have been,
Oh,
that seems like that's been on the list for like
yeah.
20 years. People are gonna be very, very happy when that one gets built.
Up and down to the dogs,
What's that?
nothing.
So, yeah, that's gonna be very popular.
On that, I know we have 25, but looking at 26 is the pickleball expansion. Is that dealing with the pool
The
at
old pool.
Holmberg Park?
Yeah, the former
Yeah.
pool that's there, we have looked at that site as would be ideal for housing additional pickleball. And the current courts, as you know, have been wildly popular.
Yeah.
There, and in fact, I think we're just using, Randy mentioned that 100,000 REIT for repairs and such. We're adding an additional entry point into the pickleball courts and a sidewalk to help make that more easier to access. So we're already, again, learning with the new facility, and that's a great example of how we're able to make small improvements that really help facilitate use.
I just continue to hear how much the pickleball people love Holmberg Park. It's
Yes.
pickleball headquarters.
Yeah, it is very well used.
Doug, as I know, about a year ago, I had received an email from a constituent, and I know you spoke about it with me, at Bidwell, the pickleball courts that we built are slightly smaller than, I guess, regulation or something. You had mentioned that there was something to fit additional pickleball courts in. They're slightly
Oh,
smaller
that
than.
was actually Holmberg when we did the
No,
redesign.
at Bidwell, they were built slightly smaller. I thought you had told me.
I don't think
And-
so at Bidwell. We just have
Okay.
2 courts at Bidwell.
Okay.
And we generally are looking at 4 courts now. For example, at Camas, we've identified 4 just based on what we're learning. And so we receive multiple requests annually for additional pickleball courts up at Prairie View, up at Bidwell. And we had some interesting feedback at Holmberg through the process. But they seem to be, again, very, very well used.
Okay, so are they constructed slightly small at one of the parks then? Then I thought somebody had emailed me like a year ago, and I thought when I spoke with you, you had said that that was something when you had worked with kind of a group of citizens.
Yes.
And they advised that to get additional courts in to make them slightly
Yes.
smaller.
And
But
that
I'm
is-
just, are the ones we're building from here on out, and I have no idea
Yes,
what.
we have the.
I have no
10
idea what
feet
regulation size is for a pickleball court, but
Right.
I mean, are we building them to a standard size?
Yes,
We
and
are,
we
okay.
do have that at Bidwell. It was
Okay.
Holmberg Park where we retrofitted
Okay,
the 2 tennis courts into, what do we have, 8 pickleball courts?
okay,
And what that specific, and when we went through the planning, they were A-OK and on board. And then right when we were during construction, they had a concern with it. And there's 5 feet spacing, and per regulation, you need to have at least 5 feet between courts.
okay,
Ideally, if you have 2 courts side by side, you would have that 5 and that 5. But as for 10, but at a minimum, you need 5.
okay,
And at Holmberg, when we worked within the existing footprint, utilizing all the fencing and we, in some cases, are down to 5 feet where the
Okay.
courts will share that 5-foot overlap.
got it,
And there was a lot of concern by a handful of folks.
okay. So
and-
it's the spacing between the courts,
Between the
not the
courts.
playing surface.
Correct,
that's
not the
wrong.
playing
Got
surface.
it, okay,
It was that space between the courts.
okay,
And ideally, in a perfect world, you would have 10 feet and a fence between the 2 so the ball doesn't roll into the other court.
okay,
And at Holmberg, when we went through the planning process, the direction absolutely was we want 8 courts. We can work with that shared 5 feet and again, mid-construction, we had a group that felt differently.
Okay.
But it did proceed and was completed as originally planned and designed. And as you can see, the feedback overall has been very, very positive. I think it's more perhaps your most competitive players that really like to have that additional spacing. But generally speaking, I don't know that we've had a lot of negative feedback related to that 5 foot since they've been in use.
okay, sounds good.
In fact, I don't know that I've had a single call specific to that. We have some warranty work where some of the stripes are peeling and we're getting that lined out, but knock on wood, in application, the feedback has really been positive, but we have been careful or any others that we've done to make sure we have that 10 feet of separation when we're working from scratch. And we have done that at Bidwell, Prairie View, and Camas.
Okay,
But Holmberg was unique in that it was a retrofit. And there was significant savings in working with the existing tall fencing that was part of the former tenant.
okay, thank you.
Questions for Doug?
We'll, his next presentation is gonna feed back in, so we'll flip back to the CIP to try to get some decision making on uses of REAP 1 and REAP 2, but I think his next presentation is gonna kind of help lead into that.
Yes, please. And I think, Ron, you have that. All right, very excited to be before you on this one. As you might recall, we've been working through the validation process, very anxious to see where we land with our team. So first couple slides, just background for anyone that may be watching out there. that's not familiar with our project, where we've combined our Camas Meadow Park, which is a new 10-acre park out in the West Plains, with our Plants Ferry Sports Complex Phase 1 renovation into a single project, working with the Progressive Design Build team. Next slide, please. Here's a snapshot of Camas Meadow. And again, looking in the base design at everything except those that are faded and dashed for future, which we'll be talking about. And so that's our Camas Meadow Park. Next slide, please. And our Plants Ferry Phase 1 that involves conversion to 3 illuminated synthetic turf fields with 185 additional parking spaces and a road connection to the south on Trent. If we were able to complete all components as identified. And the initial master planning, I think, had an estimated cost range from like 5.6 to 9.4 for this. Next slide, please. Our initial GMP contract with our Progressive Design Build team, Garco DCI Engineers, we set at 7.4 through the validation process, and we'll get into the specific numbers and options, but just kind of a snapshot ahead. In working through that process, we've been able to firm up the soft costs land acquisition budget and move more into the construction budget, again, with that same funding that we started with, the 11 million from ARPA. And again, you can see we used a good piece of that for the acquisition of property out there at Camas. But we are looking at, if we were to work only with what we have, to update the GMP, where we would have about 8.1 million in the construction budget by shifting and locking and firming some of that up, which I'll get into that. Next slide, please. And I think that's a little bit hard to see, so we'll zoom in the future slides, but this is the validation report where effectively the team has been able to share with us exactly what they can do with the funds that we have, and then we have them identify in a logical menu, if you will, additional costs if we were to be able to complete everything envisioned. Next slide, please. So looking specifically at our Camas Meadow Park, we have that base park, everything. I think within a few $1,000s of the 5 million within the base scope. We would absolutely love to complete this park as envisioned at the same time with this team. And again, with the funds that we requested in the 2025 CIP, we back in July, we had plugged in 1.1. Would love to adjust that to 1 even, and that would allow us, given these amounts, it would enable us to complete the project all at once in its entirety and add in those betterments that would include the pickleball courts, 2 small shelters, large shelter, basketball court, and complete the parking lot as envisioned. I think there's an additional 25 stalls or so there in that. Any questions on Camas?
So this is the $1 billion you saw earlier that Doug had highlighted for week 2 for Camas Meadows. That's the delta right there. That's his ask. Just connecting the dots to go along with here.
Right. Next slide, please. And again, we'll have a future slide that's very similar to this, but Plants Ferry is a little bit more complicated. So I'll do my best to walk through this with the base scope, the funds that we have in place that would allow us to complete 1 artificial synthetic turf field with rough in for the lighting, as well as grading for the second field. And what's not really articulated, but if you might envision as we when you, when I look at the additional scopes, it seems like we're getting quite a bit, which is great, because that's what we want relative to the base. And a big part of that is if we were to only do this scope, there would be a significant amount spent to restore the site to a usable shape. And so those funds spent to restore it can be spent to restore it or spent to complete the next portion that we like to, if we're able to come up with a little bit more funding in these different betterments. And so with the first betterment, with an additional 230,000, we would be able to complete the lighting for that first field. And then the second scope item, for just over $1 million, we would be able to complete that second field from grass to synthetic turf. And then the third scope item would involve lighting and illumination for that field. Again, comparable, I think same amount for the first at $235.45. The fourth scope would allow us to add in that additional 185 parking stalls there, identified number 4 in blue on the graphic, which would be very helpful if you've ever attended an event there. Parking is an ongoing challenge. The fifth scope would add in a portion of the connection road towards Trent. And that's number 5 in yellow. And one of the reasons we have separated 5 and 6 is the where those two connect. Two things are happening. One, we're going into a different municipality. Number 6, the second half of that and the connection to Trent is you're now in a different jurisdiction from a permitting standpoint. You're in the city of Spokane Valley. And the tax rate changes as well. And so it's there's a different sales tax for section option 6. And so again, we very intentionally had the contractor break this out into these two pieces. So it not only allows us to price it, but allows us to properly track sales tax and help illustrate just one of the components that we're working through from a permitting standpoint in multiple jurisdictions. Again, we have costs identified for that. And then working to the 7th would be the third artificial turf, and 8th would be lighting. And so if we were to complete the entire project as envisioned, we would estimate about 7.6 million. And keep in mind, separate from this, we have that investment of sanitary sewer at the site that's going on ahead of this for 650,000. So in at Plants Ferry. And I'll have any questions about these, and my future slides will, I think, help illustrate how far funding will go based on submittals.
So is the 3 million ARPA under the base scope?
Yes.
Can you just recap what it was 11 total for ARPA for the 2?
Yes.
Can you recap kind of where that goes in this picture?
Yes, actually, I think slide 5. If we could go to slide 5, I think that does a nice job of outlining the 11 million. So if you look at the bottom half of the slide there, we're estimating 2.25 in soft costs and land acquisition towards both, again, both projects combined. We're looking at about 8.1 million in the new guaranteed maximum price after, again, with the budget firmed up and what has been done here. And we have 650,000 of that portion for sanitary sewer infrastructure at Plants Ferry. It's just being done under a different contract. It was running ahead of the design build project. And that represents the 11 million in ARPA. In total, yes. If we were to total it all up, yes.
So Chris is just asking, do you have a rough estimate as how much of that 11? million is going to Camas Meadows.
Oh,
versus
yes.
Plants
Yeah,
Park.
about at the top, the base scope, about 3,100,000 of that goes into plants, and I believe it was just over 5 million into Camas to deliver that base scope. Thank you.
That was my understanding, it's about 6 million, we initially anticipated about 6 million to Camas. And
Yes,
5
and 5
million
for
to
plants.
plants.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next slide, please. And so tying into the request, and then the slides ahead will show how this will factor in, but I am requesting that you consider funding 1 million in car rental tax to apply to Plants Ferry. Again, shifting that 1.1 and 1.6 to now 1.7 and 1 million even based on what we've learned through the validation. Requesting 1.7 to be applied to Plants Ferry and 1 million to be applied to Camas. Next slide, please.
Just gonna clarify, saying we're saying REIT 2.
REIT 2, yes. And I use REIT because I never know exactly where you all might land as you divide between 1 and 2. With both funds being eligible for park improvements. But my understanding is, and within, I think we've identified REIT 2 for the most part, and unless you were to reshuffle that for some reason. So yes, REIT 2 is what we realistically envision there.
And then just a quick, last week, when we were talking about car rental tax, the board, given the amount of dollars that we had in that fund, the board said tentatively earmark $1 million towards Plants Ferry in anticipation of this coming in. Now it's tying it together as to why and then what the deed is.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. I love my favorite slides are 10 and 11 because it really helps show kind of that again, the existing funding where we're at. If we were to receive the $1 million, that would allow us to complete all the betterments, complete the park in its entirety, and would have a very small amount there to assist with that. Above what's estimated, and again, it would be very exciting for the community and to be able to complete it all at once while these folks we have the team in place. And so next slide, please. That one's really easy. Plants Ferries, again, we've identified incrementally what this funding could do for us if we were to receive it. So with that 1 million in car rental tax, we would be just 300,000 shy of being able to have basically what would be 2 synthetic turf fields and lighting in place for one of them. And infrastructure, I believe that would include infrastructure in the ground for the second, but not lighting. And so that would, again, that 1 million is the difference between 1 field and 2, and completion of lighting on one of them. And then if we were to receive the 1.7 million in REIT, that would allow us to add in additional scopes 3, 4, and 5. With 84,000 ahead, that would then basically we are looking at 2 fully synthetic turf fields illuminated. It would allow for the additional parking of 185 parking stalls. And it would enable us to get to the city line, the county line, if you will, right up to the edge of the municipal boundaries. And we would have a little bit of surplus in hand working towards future scopes. And then this, again, the breakdown shows we have a shortfall there of about 1.8 8 million when you take into account the additional funds up above. That's what we're looking at for the remaining scope items. And then at the very bottom of the slide, in the lower right-hand corner, I've identified funds that we're pursuing. And so there is potential for additional outside funding. This is competitive. As you may recall, you've authorized us to apply and compete for the LTAC grant dollars. So if we were to be successful, there could be, again, potential to get towards the entire project. We're looking at a request from the state. And we have also applied through Musco, which is a manufacturer of lighting. They have a grant opportunity that we've put in for very competitive. We've tried in years past. So again, these are competitive grants and funding asks that could also add to what we're asking for here today through our process that might get us further through it. Completion.
So in your vision for funding, I know that Marcus Riccelli has indicated that if the county was willing to invest into Plants Ferry, that he would advocate on our behalf to see if we could get some money from the state to invest into Plants Ferry as well. Does any of your numbers anticipate working with him to try and get some money from the state too?
Yeah, that's the 1.425 state
Okay,
request.
so that's your state request.
Right.
So that's a direct allocation. That's not a competitive grant.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for correcting me. The LTAC and the Musco are competitive grants. That would be a state allocation if we're successful.
So I think what he was suggesting was that he would advocate for a direct capital appropriation directly to plants that would take us out of the competitive environment.
Yes.
And do a direct allocation. So
Yes.
that's what I was trying to get to.
Yes, and where you land here will allow us to have, now that we have this information, we've been waiting for this information. We're very, very happy to have it because it allows those conversations to be much more meaningful now.
Okay.
That we have for actual dollars instead of estimates. We've done a lot of estimating up to this point to be able to pursue these different grants. And with the validation complete, that's very helpful. If you're in a position to and comfort level to make some level of commitment, again, that information allows those conversations to try and leverage additional dollars to be more meaningful. And I know the state, at least in past projects, they've been very receptive to come in and try to finish off when they see jurisdictions making a big investment. They have often at times been helpful that way. And so I think we're in a good position to make a great case and a great opportunity to help fund and potentially with great potential to complete the project in its entirety with some additional support.
Okay, thank you.
So Jeff, McMorris has been tracking this, as far as the state legislative request. You recall that commissioners initially put $1 million ask into the governor's budget. The 1425 was picked to align with a field and lighting, so a completed additional field as opposed to parking or roads. So felt like that would probably be easier for the commissioners and for the legislatures to look at and say, okay, for this funding, we actually get another field. The LTAC is a little bit squishy. Obviously, we didn't know what our validation would say until now, where each of those line items would be. So the time that LTAC was put in, it was put in to help us with our field renovations, if I'm not mistaken.
Complete the second field and level or help get us as far as we could with the third field.
Obviously, we now know there's a $500,000 about 465 gap to be able to create a connection on the south end through in the valley. It's RCO, or it's state parks. property, if
Yes,
I'm not mistaken.
we are working through the permitting process, so that's something, thank you, that's important to point out, that we're actively working through that. Working with state parks to working through their process to formalize permission and approvals, as well as our own department and Spokane Valley for permitting. So we're midway through those processes right now.
So obviously, youth sports has a direct connection to heads and beds, especially with lit artificial fields, is supposed to expand the available uses and hours. So we're hoping that there might be a path that the valley would be able to find to utilize some of those LTAC dollars towards that connection up there. That is an unfunded item as it stands right now, along with the other field that is part of the state landmass.
So.
Just so I'm following, so the unfunded part is the chunk of the road from the county to Trent there. Okay. Yep. Is there any ongoing dialogue with the valley in terms of funding for that?
We had talked with them really early on about them helping to partner with us on the ingress off of Trent to that lower section. Nothing has been committed by them in any way, shape, or form. So we're now seeing this, we're sharing it with the commissioners, and I think now it's time to share this back. I don't know if we'll be able to pivot on that LTAC application, or perhaps as you talk with your fellow and seatmates out there with the city council, it might be an opportunity to plant some seeds with them.
So, Ron, if you could go to slide 10. That one there. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is that everything on that drawing now, if we approve this, is going to be built out in this phase, this first phase.
Yes, sir.
God bless you.
We don't have another phase, it's just gonna be.
Correct, yeah, these were items that were identified because we did anticipate a shortfall on the front end, and again, we had a pretty darn good estimate, not knowing in this case. So the request would allow us to do it. It would allow us to complete the park with all of the elements that are identified as envisioned. We would love the opportunity to be able to do that.
Terrific.
Can you remind me on the Plants Ferry? This is phase 1, right?
Yes.
Just in a nutshell, what is 2 and 3 that's envisioned?
Okay, darn it, there's always something I didn't anticipate, shoot. Phase, there's basically it's 2A and 2B.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, 2A involves, at full completion, let's say 2A and B combined would add 3 more synthetic. If we go to slide, is it 8? No, 4. Slide 4 is a slice of that. So there would be 3 more synthetic illuminated turf fields directly north of those 3. And there would be a reconfiguring of the 5 softball, baseball fields would be reconfigured, relocated. The remaining soccer fields would be multi-purpose fields would be leveled. There's some major challenges with the slopes that make them ineligible for competitive play right now. As they exist today, it's a major issue for them. And I think they've lost 3 tournaments as a result of that. And we're hopeful that these improvements can work towards regaining those and more down the road and with the future phases. And more parking as well within that. Again, the next 2 phases, there's would be quite a bit additional parking. I think we go from the existing 700 and change stalls to just under 1,100 or certainly over 1,000 in the fully envisioned master. So in this case, the 185 would be very helpful towards that goal.
I could say that getting the new turf fields and lighting is gonna be key as we just saw with the hub opening their new fields. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
what everyone's going to. So.
And our operator out there, the Spokane Rapids, have had very positive meetings in the last few weeks with the hub. Looking at how they might coordinate and combine use of facilities, future improvements to draw back some of these events and activities. So even with the three, there's potential to collaborate with the hub on certain activities. And I think I have one last slide that speaks to the next steps. And so our hope is that, or I should say, based on where you land today in your discussions, we will work to bring back a resolution that will allow us to update and amend the GMP contract with our Progressive Design Build contractor. We will look to bring that back on November 12th for whatever you're comfortable committing, whether that's what we have in place now or some of the additional funding that's been requested. We'll work based on your discussion and decisions and direction today. We'll work to bring that back to you on the 12th. And that's important for us to lock in before the end of the calendar year to be able to utilize our compliance. And
So I guess I just want to be clear, for that resolution, the minimum that you're requesting is $1 million of REIT for Camas. And then here it's $1 million of car rental and then 1.7 in REIT.
it would be, 1 million in car rental that would apply to plants. 1 million in REIT for Camas Meadow and 1.7 million in REIT for Plants Ferry.
Okay, so you're really asking for an additional 3.7 million.
Yes,
To
yes.
finish Camas and get to a good
Go
level
much
here.
to a more logical completion point for Plants Ferry.
Okay, and so you'd make that commitment by 11/12.
Based on your conversation.
They want the resolution so they can go forward with the contract.
Right.
So we have to make that decision before then.
Yes,
To
so-
ensure that contract can move forward with Garco.
Right, so based on your direction today or next week, if you wanted, at whatever point, we will bring that back to you based on your level of commitment with either existing funds or the additional funds as requested here. So if you're supportive of the funds as requested today, then we will bring it back. We would love to bring back a resolution that would allow us to amend and lock in a GMP that would incorporate the additional 3.7 million. And we would love to bring that back to you on the 12th, if that is the direction that you provide. But we will dial it in to whatever level based on your direction and your decision-making for funding the project.
So a little bit of chicken and the egg here. We've obviously got ARP dollars that we need to have committed under contract before the end of the year. We also have how far can we go with the improvements at Parks Ferry or Plants Ferry. There may be an opportunity to, obviously we need the one for Camas that could finish it all off. The one is available in the car rental tax. One strategy or suggestion might be up to 1.7 in REIT 2 for plants. If we happen to be successful with the LTAC and get an entire 1.5, that could go towards a complete additional field with lighting. And if we're successful in the future with the state legislature, that could actually be for our third field. I'm guessing there might be an opportunity if we get a full 1.5 from LTAC. There might be an opportunity for the board to have a discussion of, do we want to fill that gap for the south section, the connection up to Trent of $500,000 if we don't have to come up with the entire 1.7 for REIT. I said that clearly enough. There's just a lot of moving pieces and parts here. If we have nothing else coming in funding, we need the 1, and the 1.7 to get through scope number 5 on Plants Ferry. But if we get those other two, we actually don't have to come up with the full 1.7 for REIT 1 or REIT 2 for the 2. So that's just something to noodle. I think that's what we need to, is we need to have a commitment up to 1.7, but with the hope that we're successful in other requests and we don't have to use the entire 1.7.
And that's also very helpful to the Progressive Design Build team if they have an understanding of what that minimum commitment level will be. That allows them, because there's so many different scenarios based on our funding and where it goes and what's designed. So that will be very helpful to them too, to maximize whatever commitment we have.
Just for Randy, I'm looking at the REIT 2 document. So just I'm understanding the capacity for 25. It says category subtotal, well, it says, let's see, annual capacity 2.88.
Yes, so this would
And
be.
then fund balance 2.5.
Right, so you could spend up to 5 million. The 2.8, so basically the 1 million of 1.7, we use most of our annual. We would still have some fund balance left over that you could go into in REIT 2 as well.
And is that annual, that's annual capacity minus the
The
commitments,
committed stuff above,
which
yes.
is not very many
Correct.
items. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Thank you.
And again, the 1 million in car rental tax, last week when we went through that, the projected fund balance at the end of 25 is 1.5 million. That did not include anything to Spokane Sports, which we've done 220 for the last number of years. They were coming again next week to present to you. But that, even if we did that again, we would still have about 1.3 million. So we could commit $1 million of that to Plants Ferry, because that is an allowed use for the car rental teams.
Okay.
So I guess, so my question is, since I was not here last week, so I was not here for the presentation, is trying to figure out, do we have a comprehensive list of all the things that people are asking for out of REIT 2, out of REIT 1?
REIT 2 is primarily would be parks out of REIT 2. REIT
Right, but I
1,
just saw in their earlier presentation, they have a whole laundry list of things.
yeah, there's a, we still need to go through and say, can we afford all of these things? And which is the highest priority? So if Camas and plants are your highest priorities, it just may mean some other projects may not be able to go in 25. They may have to go out into 26.
Right. So has there been a discussion as to what, if these two are our highest priorities, which I think we're all, I believe so, but then what could potentially be getting pushed that I don't know is getting pushed?
That would be, we would need to walk through the capital list and just say, and Doug, I don't know if you would.
Because I would also think that some of the things like Fish Lake was on here, we want to complete those projects that we've already started. So I guess that's the piece that is missing for me, and I don't know if we discussed it last week.
We didn't notice the
We did not discuss
conversations.
So that is the piece that I need to make a good decision. So I'm aware as to what I potentially am pushing down the road there versus what we can really accomplish in this year with these dollars.
I think the best visual on that is going to be the capital plan that's out in the shared folder that Randy and Tessa have been maintaining. And it has all of Doug's planned projects that he highlighted earlier. In the year, it shows the need is and what that funding would look like as well, what that needed funding would look like. So that's probably the best visual description of what's out there in the out years. This year, if all of the items that Doug has requested for week 2 are funded, just doing a quick back of the envelope, we use all but $1 million of the 5.4 of available. So we still have $1 million that would roll over into 2025, but balance. So the week 1 is a broader conversation because we have a lot of campus things that we could use for that as well. But there's not the biggest pieces here are all week 2 related.
I think that place to make sure that I see that and can ensure where we're at to move forward.
Sure. And from a departmental standpoint, we did recommend them in order of priority, and Camas and plants are at the top, right under Shields, where there's already been a commitment. So again, just from a departmental, and I know you will evaluate and prioritize as you do, but if that's of any help, that's part of what we're asked to do and look at when we.
So I think we need to bring it back next week so we can get that resolution ready for the contractors, because I understand that. I want to make sure we do that, but I think I just need a little bit of time to make sure that I feel we've got the funding to do everything. And I mean, I'll just say, Camas would be a priority to make sure we have the funding just to complete that part. Because if we partially complete it, we don't do the pickleball courts, as we know from other parks that have pickleball courts. If we don't do it, that will be like one of the things everyone's asking for. And I get it. I mean, it's such a popular sport right now, and we want to be able to do that. So I think, my priority would be to make sure we get Camas completed. So that way it's almost there. We were trying to do it with the funds we had, so let's get that done, but then figuring out the rest of the list. So
Can you reiterate, Doug, why Shields was #1 on your departmental list relative to what we're talking about here?
And the reason behind that is, you might recall, I think it was June or July.
What slide are you? I've lost it. in this
2.
packet.
Yeah, slide 2
2025
in the
priorities.
first presentation.
It's back in the first presentation. It's way the heck up there.
It's under Randy's, I think.
What slide number is it?
43 out of 230.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And the reason behind that is back in June and July, again, we work hard to finish what we started. The city of Spokane is lead through an agreement we have with them, where we had done a joint application for grant funds where they combined Shields Park with another city park. Not Beacon Hill, but Kansas, thank you. And so they're taking lead on the implementation. They had finally completed the design documents, and have been able to obtain more accurate construction estimate. And an additional 500,000 was needed in order to complete that project and utilize the grant funds as envisioned. And so you were very supportive as a board and approved a resolution where we amended our agreement and committed to provide that additional 500,000 in 2025 that will allow that project to be completed. And since there's been a commitment made, that's why we identified it as #1. And then next would be Camas and plants and down the road here.
Okay, thank you.
So refresh my memory. When we talked about this several months ago, there was still some neighborhood opposition within the city to moving forward with this project. Have they resolved that now?
Which project?
Shields. As I remember, the Minnehaha neighborhood had concerns, and I don't know about the property owners along the river there toward the east. but there
I-
was some,
I think you're confusing, that was the city's dog park they wanted to do over there. And it butted up to county residents, but it was in the city, or possibly
that
maybe
could
that's
be,
the,
that could be, like I say, it was several months ago and
Yeah.
my memory is vague on it, but I do remember that there was some concern about what was going on out there.
I think that was just down the road a little bit from this, that, yeah, the city wanted to build a dog park.
Yeah, I don't know of negative comments on this one, but I am familiar with a little bit familiar with Commissioner Kearns is saying, and that is correct. There were quite a few concerns, and I don't know that that project went forward.
Okay.
With the city, I think they may have done something different, but to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any negative
Okay.
concerns or feedback related to completion of Shields. That's been positive from what I've heard.
Okay. Terrific.
So let's see you next week.
Yeah, thank you very much for the time. We're again really excited to have real information to work with and looking ahead. Yeah, save one for the end.
Okay, so maybe you coming back?
I am coming back for the one last thing. Tessa said I should have done it first, and she's right, of course. And this is really about additional budget sessions. We have one Monday left. Next week is the 4th. Can't believe it's November already. And that is our last Monday session. Next week, we have 3 presentations. We're gonna have Shrek here. We'll have historical preservations and also Spokane sports. In addition, we will be following up with you on REAP 2 and the request from Parks Department so we can get a decision made on that. December 2nd is only a month away from that. It's 4 weeks away. And really, the last 2 weeks of November, you have, I always say it wrong, is it Wassac?
Wasac, and then is Thanksgiving.
And then you have a week and then Thanksgiving week. So after our presentation on the 18th, which is for the setting of the decisions, excuse me, on the levies, we don't have any other planned meetings. So I'm concerned that we won't get all the decisions done we need unless we have additional sessions next week or the week following. I know on
I think the 11th is.
and 11th is a holiday,
Yes.
so we could do the 12th. That hopefully would be a lighter day because there's not another meeting until, not another Tuesday meeting until the 3rd of December. We could also do next week, maybe the end of the week, Thursday, Friday, something in that area. You know, the 7th, the 8th, and possibly the 12th. I think we do probably need to have this, other than the levy decision, pretty well done by 2 weeks from Friday.
So one of the other pieces of this is, in order to meet our 10-day notice requirement for the budget decision on the 2nd, we have to send out notice on the 22nd, by the 22nd of November.
We have to have the documents available for everybody.
Documents have to be available for them, which is essentially what the board anticipates a completed budget is. So that's why that's part of why Randy's highlighting, we have a kind of a short window here. Another suggestion is, since we don't meet on the 11th, we already have a decent slate of activities on our budget workshop on the Monday, plus we'll be talking more capital. Either meet, any Tuesday morning meeting is the 12th, meet longer for a budget workshop, or in the afternoon for a budget workshop, and then also schedule the public hearings on the 18th for the levy. That's not gonna take that long, so we could add a couple more hours of block at the end of that too. I think we're gonna need both of those sessions, because we really need to get back to the available dollars that have not been programmed yet in the budget. need the board to make some decisions on both capital, how much of the 12 million that's unallocated, how much of it's gonna go towards capital, how much is gonna go towards M&O. So I suspect we're gonna need a couple 2-hour blocks of time to build both of those. So that's the suggestion. Don't know how that looks on everyone's calendars. We won't know what the 12th looks like until we get there. We could just plan on having, want to do it in the afternoon, plan on having really limited public hearings in the afternoon, so we could dedicate a couple hours of a block on the 12th in the afternoon and then on the 18th in the morning.
The eighteenth is virtual, I believe, board members, to refresh your memory. I think you're gonna be at Wasack and I think that's gonna be virtual, Scott. As I recall, it might be difficult to have a workshop on the virtual, but I'd leave that in the boards.
What about Friday the 15th in the morning? As kind of a additional time. Usually we don't. There's not a lot of meetings that are scheduled of other committees on Fridays. That you do Friday morning. I mean, and still Tuesday if we. If the briefing session is
12.
Yeah, on the 12th is low, we could do. Fill that up a little bit more and then do Friday morning as a secondary. Cause yes, we've got to start figuring out how to make decisions.
And we probably also have Friday the 8th if you wanted to go that early, but if not, if you want to just do the 12th and the 15th.
Filming my county spotlight that morning at 10.
I have we have any PDA.
Okay.
Just what you were suggesting the 15th.
The
correct?
15th,
I was
okay.
just the 15th, just
I
keeping the same week that you were trying to do extra.
I can go late on the 12th and I can do the 15th too. So if we want to do both days, I mean, I can make it work.
I will actually be back in Charlotte, North Carolina for a co-work meeting with Novia, so I will be zooming in on the 12th.
Yep.
I'll be back the night of 14th, so I'll be here Friday.
If the 15th works, what time would you like to start on the 15th? Want to do a traditional 9? Want to do 11?
8:30.
8:30? 8:30 to 10:30? That was the 15th.
8:30 to 10:30.
8:30 to 10:30. Just trying to get for Gina so she could do notice and
Right,
then
I mean 9 to 11.
11.
It's fine too, I don't know with school schedules.
Okay. All right, 9's traditionally when you guys start, so, and then on the 12th, do we want to do, well, one, we don't have to notice anything in the morning. If we have an hour of available time that we're not committed to other agenda, we can start the workshop then. And then we can have like a special meeting notice for after the legislative to continue, actually, we just continue that meeting to the afternoon.
Yeah.
For any additional hour if we need it.
Yeah.
Make it a little more clean for notice requirements.
So then that gets us a couple extra hours on Tuesday and then Friday, and like I said, I'll be zooming in, so.
Okay, so
Thank you,
thanks
Commissioners.
for your flexibility, commissioners. It's helpful.
So the 18th, we were avoiding due to Wasatch travel.
No, I
Is that?
think we're still. We need the morning of the 18th.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
public
yeah.
hearing.
Have the
Right.
Just the
public
9 a.m.
hearing.
public.
Yeah, I could do the afternoon if just letting you know if we need more.
But the property tax levy hearing, I mean, we have from 9 to noon, but that's not going to.
That'll take 30
Yes.
minutes. at the most.
So we could then even use that time.
morning.
For their. anything else that we have. So
That is a backstop.
So what day are you talking about now?
on the Monday, the 18th. Is our. Already discussed that that's our property tax levy hearing.
Yeah.
So we would just extend that, because that should only take a few minutes, but it's blocked out for 3 hours. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go Sunday, so I'll just zoom in from Vancouver.
I'm just gonna confirm
Down that
with
evening.
legal. Can we do
Oh,
budget
yes, I can zoom
after
in.
the levy hearing on
Yeah,
Monday, the
I could do
18th?
that.
or-
We'd have to notice it, and Gina's just doing the special
I'll
notice
change
now,
my
yes.
hotel, extend it from that.
Okay, so maybe send us a recap or,
Yes, we will
Those
send out a
times.
recap of those times. for you.
and then if we don't need them, we don't need them, but
Right.
at least we've got that scheduled.
Thank you.
So. Then,
And your question, I've now brought Scott in directly to ask him.
okay, very good. So this takes us to Scott Chesney. So yes, earlier Doug was just talking about their planning,
Yes,
planning
I,
and,
I was watching. I saw,
okay,
we're really well connected with parks, particularly because they have an impact on doing their own planning as that has to be coordinated with the comprehensive plan. But also as we've all learned in the last couple of years, the capital facilities part of that has to be accounted for in goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as well. So we've had a really good staff to staff connection with parks over the last part of the year here. So we're working together. I know Doug made a comment about funding. As you know, Commerce has funded the comprehensive plan through a grant. We will be doing a parks and open space element, so we'll be coordinating with him on that. But we have not, and at the moment, our budget doesn't have a $200,000 allocation that we can hand over to parks for their plans specifically. We'll coordinate as best we can though within them.
so I'm assuming that 200,000 is an estimate on their part. So, and yet you got the grant from Commerce, but we also provided ARP funding to help as well. So I mean, that's where I'm just hoping that we can all work together because there is no more additional funds or people. And so we just have to work
We
as
we
best
are,
as we can together.
and we are, we do the best we can. We're also trying to be as creative as we can with Commerce, because the funds for climate planning as well as the comprehensive plan are somewhat programmed and prescribed into what we can do. But Commerce has been really very flexible right now. We will be able to do our environmental impact assessment or environmental impact statement using the climate grant funds. And so that's a really a huge distinction. We're also being able to update the coordinated water system plan that we've talked about before, using some of those funds in addition to funding from the city itself. And so we're really trying to use those funds as efficiently as we can. The one challenge we're running up against is the biennium. Commerce is saying that any funds that are not spent by June 30th, 25 are lost. They can't be carried over because it's the end of the biennial state budget. Yep. Makes no sense, frankly. The money can't just disappear, but yet that's the rule we're working under. And if what we're going to try to do is program and get those funds fully programmed into that first year. And then the legislature is being asked to appropriate new funds for the second half of our cycle from fiscal year 26, from July to June for the rest of it. So matching the budget calendar is a little more challenging than we anticipated, but yeah, we're doing that. And like I said, we will continue to work with parks specifically on what we can do to help fund part of their exploration, part of their plan.
Well, because I would think if it's climate dollars that Commerce is using for that, parks would fit under that because it's trying to provide those open spaces, those green spaces that are generating better environmental outcomes.
We
So,
agree, particularly
maybe-
the resiliency side of the climate and resiliency side. And that's a larger grant fund that we have to work with.
So hopefully we can. If they're flexible with those dollars, that would be a way to use those and then we wouldn't have to
Yes.
be giving any back.
And to be very clear, Department of Commerce has been very, very flexible and helpful in how we're programming those. So they have been a good partner. We jump into
Yeah, let's go.
plan amendments.
Let's do it.
We have Well, we have two full items before you. The first one's gonna be the comprehensive plan amendments for 2024. Next slide, please. As all of you certainly know, GMA allows for municipalities and counties to amend their comprehensive plan. It can be done once a year. All plan amendments have to be considered simultaneously so that we can assess the currency and cumulative impact on our levels of service. This year, we had 4 new amendments, and then 2 were continued from prior years. 5 of those are increasing land availability for housing, and 1 is a change into regional commercial in the town of Spangle. Also in the plan cycle is the active transportation plan acted on earlier this year by the Planning Commission, but packaged here under our GMA requirements. So these are before you today for your briefing and discussion. We will have a resolution for you for next week, receiving the Planning Commission's recommendations and setting November 12th for your consideration of this year's cycle. Next, please. You can see with the inclusion of the CPA 5 in Spangle, we've expanded the map pretty significantly this year. But again, many of these on the north side, the new ones are pretty much all on the north side. Next, please. Here's the summary of them. CPA 1 being the transportation plan, CPA 2, an LDR to HDR recommendation in the area of the northwest quadrant of Wall and Country Homes Roads. CPA 3 acres in the Hastings Farwell corridor, 4 also in Farwell further east, and a light industrial to medium density, and then 5 in North Spangle. CPA 02, as you, I'm sorry.
Questions for you? I've been seeing reports here lately, actually in the last couple of weeks, talking about, you know, the growth in the county and all that kind of stuff. But from your perspective, where are we seeing the greatest amount of growth pressure within the urban growth boundary? I mean, are we pressuring in the valley? Are we pressuring up north or the west? Where are the hot spots, if you will, that we ought to be paying particular attention to?
Sure, and there's 2 very, very clear ones over the last couple of years. One is the West Plains, all through the West Plains, particularly obviously in the south of I-90. And the second is the North Mead, Wandermere area into the north of the city along that Hastings Farwell corridor. You've seen 3 or 4 amendments in the last 2 years there, and we're seeing a lot of growth on that northeast edge of the city of Spokane. Those 2 areas comprise the most clear current development pressure of what we've seen. There have been only a couple of amendments outside of that territory.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. I just wasn't sure what the trends were and what was shifting, what wasn't shifting and stuff, so and you can only believe half of what you read in the newspaper, so I just don't know which half yet. Okay, thanks.
Certainly. So the last 2 on this slide, CPA 02 from 2022 was withdrawn, and we'll get to a little bit later quickly. And then 1223, you had that continued over to allow for additional public comment, and we have done so over the course of the year. Next, please. In the county code, there are 6 criteria by which the zoning code can be amended. Every respective one has to clear at least one of these hurdles to go forward. All of them have met that requirement. Next, please. So CPA 01 transportation plan. Jamie Hayes is here with me. She is the author of that and able to certainly answer any questions. As you recall, perhaps this is a slightly different configuration. GMA combined in the recent past, but it used to be the bicycle plan and the pedestrian plan into an active transportation plan. And so we've recast this. Those 2 were before you last year. We recast it in the new GMA cloak, and we're bringing it forward in this amendment. And you can kind of see what's here, what has changed from the past. Next slide, please. There are four basic goals in this. And part of it is really connectivity. How do we have an active transportation plan that works to create a better quality of life? Kind of the simplest point. And this is going to play, can I give you a preview? This is going to play a big role in how we're doing the context for the 2026 update, where we're looking at how we grow on our edges with a different kind of zoning and planning that involves urban design, involves mixed uses. So these goals are valid for future planning as well as today.
So, and I know Commissioner Kearns and I have been tracking this, because it's been a conversation both at STA and even SRTC. The idea of safe transportation corridors assumes that all of the hazards created in the corridors are created by automobiles. And I think what we found out through the medical examiner's report is that half of those casualties are because they were either drunk or high on drugs. Had nothing to do with the safety of the streets. And I know that on Tib and predominantly on Tib, some on Crab recently, but it's predominantly Tib. You know, the conversation started out about, oh, we've got to have safer streets. And then it revolved around, how do we keep the drunks off the sidewalks, kind of a deal. So I know that there's energy going around right now about, you know, creating a safer transportation network, but making assumptions and conclusions that aren't supported by the facts. And so I just wanted to hope that as we move forward with this, we become much more aware of all of the aspects about our transportation corridor, not just the design of the corridor itself. Does that make any sense?
Sure, absolutely. I think behavior is one of those things that we're gonna have to look out for as far as people driving cars as well as walking or using active transportation in general. And I think that the improved safety isn't necessarily, we can't control that end of it very well. That's more of an enforcement issue rather than an infrastructure issue. And so I think that improved safety is, how do we fill in the gaps on the sidewalk so people aren't walking out in the street? Or if you're pushing a stroller or if you're disabled, I think that part of the safety improvement is, you know, if you have a corridor where people tend to be speeding or it's high volume, adding a little bit of separation from the people that are using active transportation and the people that are driving. So I think that your point is really valid. And I actually just attended a webinar that basically addressed exactly what you said. It was really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. But I think that it's a really, really good point. I'm just not sure how to tackle the behavioral thing as far as distracted driving or even people walking across the sidewalk looking at their phone instead of looking around and who's around them, you know.
That was the other big
Yeah.
generator of traffic accidents was
Sure.
people don't look up anymore.
And I think that it's really fair to point out that maybe it's not just drivers that are, you know, responsible here. I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I would just, ask, because so much of this does feed into SRTC, and are you coordinating and talking to them?
Absolutely, yeah. So in part of the 111-page document that I wrote to try to be thorough and concise, there's a level of traffic stress that I actually got from Jason Leon and Michael Redlinger from SRTC. That it's an analysis not done by them. It's by a gentleman named Peter Firth. And it's basically volume and speed and separation. And, so we work hand in hand. I'm on the TIP working group. I'm on the TTC and I work on projects. I've been on the Division Connect project for, it feels like a million years now, but I think it's more like 3 or 4 that I've been on that project. So I work really closely with STA and SRTC. I'm a good contact for them and we exchange information regularly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Next slide, please. This, as Jamie has sort of alluded to, has had extensive public engagement over the past, 2 years?
Maybe 3. I feel like I've been working on this project for a long time too.
So you can see kind of some raw numbers of participants that have been up there. Next, please. And summary that you initiated this in September of 23. The public hearing was held in May of this year. The BOCC or the Planning Commission's motion was unanimous to recommend your approval of this amendment. Next, please. Amendment number 2, another familiar place, the northwest quadrant of Country Homes and Wall. This is a single family lot, an LDR requesting high density, less than an acre. It is at the southern edge of county open space as well, and the road on its north side feeds that neighborhood that you can see to the west. The request is to go to that to the HDR. Next, please. You can see the basic impacts of what that would be in their most dense population. It could be a potential increase of 20 residents. Next, please. Comments from the public were about traffic. There was some concern about water runoff. There's a small critical area in the northwest corner of this property that takes drainage from that open space on the north. There was quite a lot of concern about parking and emergency vehicle access because of the limited connection on the road, the east-west road on the north edge of this parcel. Next, please. The Planning Commission held the public hearing, and the motion to recommend approval of this failed the Planning Commission by a vote of 3-4. And so to summarize, the amendment does meet the statutory and code criteria to move forward. The concerns that were from the public were chiefly about the scale and scope of a future project. However, the simple nature of that is it's less than a 1 acre lot. The amount of development that could go on that would also have to consider open space requirements in HDR, stormwater management, parking, suggests that the scale of any structure would really be quite modest. So staff's recommendation, staff had no concerns about this amendment. The Planning Commission did, though, choose to not push this forward. If this board wishes to agree with that recommendation, we would certainly follow the normal procedure of accepting the Planning Commission's recommendations en masse in 2 weeks. However, if you disagreed with that, you would need to hold your own public hearing, and we would help set that up for you in the next couple of weeks. In which case it would push all of these off by a week or so. They'd still strongly, which we would very much want to get this done before the end of the calendar year because of GMA requirements, but they would all have to be considered as a group by you if this one gets pushed off. So this is a little bit of a distinction in our process this year.
Madam Chair, just to refresh my memory, it is possible though for the board, if they decide to hold a hearing on this, to kick it over till next year, and then you could take action on the others, if you will, board members. But if you decide you'd like to take action on this year, you'd have to hold a public hearing if you want to consider approval of this project as opposed to the failure of the project to get approval from the PC. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next slide, please. Amendment 3, in the again, the Hastings Farwell corridor. And while this is, you can see it as 2 separate parcels highlighted up here. The intervening or interstitial parcel is also held in common ownership. So there is a unified group here. Again, going from low density residential to high density residential, about 3 acres. Next slide, please. It's a total of 6 acres. The applicant is a company that builds seniors housing, and so that's the presumptive use of this at the end. The density increase you can see on the right as well. Next, please. There were no comments received on this one. Next, please. And so here you can see the proximity, also with coincidentally with 1223 from the prior year in that Hastings Farwell corridor with the schools, the open space, Newport Highway to the south. And this was recommended for your approval unanimous. Next, please.
Can I-
So,
Scott, can I add, so, is that normal to receive no public comment? Usually these types of ones do receive substantial public comment.
Yeah.
Is it, do you think, is it because of the senior housing aspect that
it might have
kept
been,
that down?
yeah, it might have been, there has been, it was unusual.
Okay,
We received a lot of comments in the last 2 years for the other 3 or 4 that were in this exact corridor for local housing. So it was unusual that we received no comments for this.
and these were posted, these had the signs out on the properties and all that, and was it 400 feet? Radius get notified by mail and all that?
All the property owners that within 400 feet of the edges of the property get an individual mail. Signs are posted on the property. It is noticed in the paper of record and also on our website.
Okay, now I know, and so I've received, yeah, I mean, comments, people have reached out over the years about the density that's happening along Farwell Road. How is Farwell holding up as far as being able to handle that traffic? I know there are studies that are done, I mean, far above my understanding as far as the traffic impacts, but I mean, is Farwell holding up? Are we approaching sort of that capacity issues on where are we at as far as that?
I maybe put Jamie on the spot here a little bit, but our internal transportation planning staff found through the trip generation letters that there would be no serious degradation of our levels of service. But yes, the cumulative impact is something we will be looking at in that 26 plan for probably transportation improvements in the area.
Okay.
And the road looks pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a concrete road, so it's pretty durable at this point.
Okay, yeah, I know, I mean, it's 4, 2 lanes each direction and the turn lane down the middle, so I mean, it's, fully built out, but yeah, just wasn't sure as, or kind of that capacity as far as how many more trip generations a day until we start kind of seeing that issue.
This is one of those amendments that's a really good example of how we should be doing a little better job of thinking about planning into the future. We've had, like I said, at least 3 or 4 small amendments in this corridor that have all moved into a higher density capacity. And this corridor with Newport Highway, with Hastings, Farwell, and with the Costco and the Kaiser site coming up, is one that was going to have density increases almost by nature, whether planned or not. And so looking at this in the future, the things we're anticipating is rather than, an LDR, MDR, HDR zone, something like a neighborhood suburban zone that allows you a range of densities by right. And with that comes a different performance. If you want to do higher density, you've got to have higher amenities, or you've got to have amenities and services as part of it. If you're doing lower density, you get to do something else. But it anticipates from the beginning that there could be a more intense use in here than just single family homes on, 2/5 of an acre lots. And so this is one of the examples, like, here's what we've done over 3 or 4 years that we probably could have done better had we planned it from the beginning.
Thank you.
Next, please. 4 is kind of an interesting one. It's a triangle of land, again, on Farwell Road over against the BNSF line on the east side of it. Zoned light industrial when the GMA plan was first introduced, presumably because of perhaps rail access industry of some kind. Obviously, it has lain fallow for all this time, and so the request is to move it into a residential use complementary to that the neighboring uses. It's a little over 5 acres. Next, please. Since it's an industrial group use, it could provide housing for as much as 125 new residents. So it's a nice addition to our housing stock. But what you can also see on the slide is right now, there is no sewer in this provided by the county. The closest is just to its west, about 1,000 feet or so. And so that would have to be overcome before it could develop. Next, please. I realize this slide's hard to read. It's probably easier in your packets. The comments about this were generally from the neighbors who were concerned that the road was not ready for that, ready for more intense development. And as you know, the road improvements might be a mitigation when a building permit is first submitted and then a more detailed trip generation letter is done. Those road improvements might be a condition for a building permit. So that would be handled at the permitting side. There was concern about the loss of open space, which is fairly typical in these areas. But that's, you have to use open lands to develop them. And just because somebody had a free park for the last 20 years, that doesn't mean it can stay that way unless they choose, of course, to buy it. Next, please. And the SEPA on this was both water and sewer. Like any place that's on the edge of a thing, edge of our urban growth area, water and sewer would have to be accounted for and provided at the time of a building permit. And that will make this a fairly expensive project. This is why the higher density designation is warranted. Next, please. You can see in the vicinity map, there are, it is on the edge of the UGA. It has decent access to services and amenities. And this was recommended unanimously for your approval. Next, please. CPA 5 in Spangle, north of Spangle, is in their urban growth area. It's a 11-acre parcel, and this the request for the CPA is part of a parcel. The actual parcel is all of that combined from the old highway to the new highway, about half of which is outside of the urban growth area. This is limited to the area within the UGA and is being requested from its original rural traditional zone into a regional commercial. So yeah, this one, we're going to ask you for conditional approval, or PC rather, I guess, is asking you for conditional approval on having a concurrent development agreement. And a development agreement will limit their uses to those that can be supported by a well and septic system until such time as Spangle improves their water and sewer capability and can fully serve them. Under that condition, they would be allowed to use a well and have a septic field within the urban growth area, with the condition that as the services are available, they are required to hook up to them. That development agreement will say that it does not go into effect until either the appeal period for the comp plan has expired, or if there are appeals, the resolution of those appeals is completed. And the reason for that is if the development agreement went concurrently and you signed that, it would in fact be a legal contract that would preempt the comp plan amendment if the comp plan amendment was in fact appealed. And that's not a situation we want the county to be in. So we want them to be effective at the same time. Next, please. You can see some of what that development agreement is here. The intended use in that regional commercial is described to us as something like or analogous to a Green Bluff harvest shop where you can get locally grown products. You can do some, it's kind of a gathering place. We think it's a particularly good use for Spangle. It will provide kind of a nice gathering center for them. And that's why the development agreement will limit them to that uses, but it's we think it's actually a very nice added amenity to a small town that can help them keep their vibrancy. Next, please.
Question.
Yes.
What was the planning commission's feedback on that one? I might have missed that.
He hasn't gotten to that yet.
Oh,
Funny you should ask. On the next slide, the planning commission agreed and they did recommend unanimous approval to you for action.
thanks, I missed that.
So. Next, please.
So, before you jump away, as I remember, Spangle is challenged with sewer and water capacity.
Yes.
Down there, and so is there another plan now to expand their sewer and water, or the sewer?
They,
down there, as opposed to what was there last year on the other project I was working on?
they had started independently on a study for how to improve their water and sewer. As we approached them to partner in the climate and resiliency element of the plan, they agreed to do that. And then as part of that work with the coordinated water system plan, we will also be helping them in studying that water system.
Okay.
So they are currently, by their own town policy, they are not allowing any additional taps until they solve that issue.
Yeah. Okay.
So next slide, please. Just a quick recommendation. This was the plan that was 108 acres. It shrunk to 38 acres in its second go around. The request was withdrawn chiefly due to the fact that the applicant and reviewing agencies, notably the city and DOT, were unable to reach an agreement on a SEPA mitigation compromise. And so the applicant chose to withdraw and reconsider this as part of the 26 plan. Next, please. So we would, since this is something that you did initiate and have continued, your action in this would be to continue it again, as we said here, and include it in the 26 plan analysis. Next, please. Finally, 1223 on North Mill Road. This is 2 LDR lots being asked for an MDR designation, a little under 3 acres. We considered this in 23. We held it open for additional public comments throughout the year and through the workshops and public hearings. Next, please. Again, the density changes are not new, and nothing in the subsequent year of comment changed analysis from planning, from public works and streets, from wastewater and stormwater. Next, please. You can see here a summary of the comments. As you recall from from 23, they were fairly extensive in concerns about changing character of a higher density product coming into a single family neighborhood, additional traffic, additional wastewater concerns. Louis Graff from our wastewater spoke with the Planning Commission and told them that the project would hook into a slightly different sewer interceptor than the neighbors were anticipating. And so the technical issues were not an issue moving this forward. Next, please. And as it was in 23, the Planning Commission affirmed its motion of recommendation to you unanimously. Next, please. The important part of doing this as a group is to look at those cumulative impacts, notably as they relate to our capital facilities planning. And you can see here are kind of the elements that we look at. Next, please. And most importantly, our analysis concludes that the addition of this density and this intensity does not have any degradation of the levels of service below our minimum standards as established. So there is no capital issue in moving this forward. And next, please. And here's our schedule. You can see, as always, these were taken in December of 23. October 29th, the Planning Commission, or today, I'm sorry, we're briefing you September 26th, the Planning Commission acted on these to make their recommendations, and they're scheduled for your consideration on November 12th, barring any distinction related to CPA or 2. Next, please. That's what we have for our plan amendments for 24.
So really the one question is on O2. This was not unanimously approved. We could continue that. Is that right? Without a public hearing?
If you wanted to reverse the planning commission's decision, you would need to hold a separate public hearing for that and then act at that time. It
Or,
would have to be noticed ahead of time and then act on that time.
or we could choose to continue it.
You could continue it into 25. We are not going to be taking formal amendments in 25 because we're so close to working on 26. So that would mean you could literally act on it anytime in 25. It wouldn't have to go to the end of the year. It could be acted on in February.
Or we choose to not change.
If you agree with the planning commission, then it would simply stay on your legislative agenda for 2 weeks.
Or you could hold a public hearing next year, Madam Chair, and at that hearing, you could either change your mind and, change the planning commission and approve it. Or you could not change the planning commission's recommendation and deny it. Isn't that not correct, Scott?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Can I ask again so we have the public comments, what were, I mean, on a 3-4 vote, what were the planning commissioners' reasons for voting no?
They were.
I know you talked about the size, you thought the development would be would be very modest, but what did they say about?
They were sympathetic to the public comments. They were sympathetic that it was one single family lot with 3 attached to it, or 3 subsequent ones down the intersection. It was the traffic and access on the street on its north side, which is the neighborhood entrance, adding too much capacity. They were concerned. They were somewhat supportive of the environmental conditions on the northwest corner of the parcel where the itinerant stream cuts through. And it was the concern of, is the multifamily project ill-placed? I think they were simply reflecting the comments of the people who were there at the time. It's from a practical perspective, with the exception of a street, and again, that street might have been required to be improved as a mitigation for the project going forward. But those other more detailed specifics happen at the time of a building permit application, not at the planning stage. So it goes from a single family property that could, it's 8/10 of an acre at 6 units an acre. You could redevelop it by right up to some level of capacity. The multifamily designation allows for more flexibility on how that happens, and that's chiefly relates to open space and stormwater management. So and the other frankly, the other option is if you were to agree with the planning commission, this is going to be a study area for the 2026 plan anyway, and it's likely going to be an area like Hastings Farwell that would be recommended back to you as something that could appropriately have higher density if it's planned and built adequately. So even if you were to leave it alone this year, this is an area that will probably come back with a new classification in 26.
It's not a matter of if, it's when.
I mean, we have no guarantees, but
It's an obvious area.
intuitively, our recommendation is going to head toward a higher density use in this area.
Right, but delaying it just allows it to go a little more through the process of it.
Was a part of the, oh, you did, yeah, you said northwest, so that's like that big kind of.
Yeah, it's that single
Wetlands.
parcel. There are 3 other parcels that come along to the south until you get to the intersection. Much like the city does, we considered bringing this forward for your consideration and replanning, rezoning all of those parcels to essentially kind of unify that intersection. But that's a process that the county at least hasn't used anytime soon, and we thought that might have been more confusing than helpful.
I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, I was thinking, you said northwest, and so I was thinking directly north is that big sort of like wetlands.
Yes.
Property that where with all the trails and.
Yes.
And all that stuff, okay, I thought that's what you were referencing, was that,
I'm sorry.
okay, never mind.
We see it probably a more dense future for these parcels along that quadrant coming down to Country Homes Road, probably in the future. And you don't have to make a decision today. Obviously, we're not asking for that. But when we will bring forward a resolution receiving the planning commission's recommendations and setting that, and we will bring you a second resolution that you can decide on separating this if you'd like.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you still have one more item?
We do zoning text amendments. There were,
I pause you
oh,
real quick on this one. What is the reason, is it typical for the active transportation plan to kind of be done in this way as a comp plan amendment?
yes, because it amends the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. So that's why it's packaged in here.
And then how will that be incorporated into the update for 26? Is it, will it pretty much stay as is, or is it looked at again in a larger context?
Without dumping all this on Jamie, we will re-examine the active transportation plan in view of the rest of the plan changing. If the rest of the plan was going to stay substantially the same, chances are this would be done. But the fact that we're looking at this, that it's different approaches to growing in our urban growth areas, and also some of our joint planning efforts with the various cities, we want to make Jamie's work, make sure that, you know, we have connections that actually are built and planned at the same time with these different things. So there'll be some refinements to it.
Okay.
But it'll be totally wrapped in. It won't be a separate element.
And it's a good head start with 111 pages.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
very thorough.
It's worth
Thank you.
doing, do it right.
So the zoning text amendments that are before you. There are a number of them. Next, please. There was one from 2023 and 4 this year in 24. The first one in 23 is the gun club amendment. The second one was the temporary use that we talked about earlier in the year after the fires. The third was for potential wedding venues in rural areas, and the fourth was, or it has the wind farm amendment. Next, please. Very quickly, the same 6 criteria apply that you've seen before. Next, please. And so the summary of the amendments is here, where Planning Commission is asking for your approval on 2 of them and to continue 3 of them into 2025. And we'll get into the reasons for all of that here in just a second. Next, please. So the gun and archery range amendment is a change in definition from what is in the zoning code now, as well as a set of conditions by which a conditional use permit would be issued for a future site development. Next, please. The definition would change, as you can see here, the underlined definition would be added. The current definition is very straightforward. But what the gun club is asking for is the ability to recreate the facility they had in the valley before it was sold to the school district, where they held multi-day shooting events, tournaments that provide them some operating revenue, as well as a recreational and sporting use of the shooting sports. Our definition didn't allow that, and notably, they wanted the clarification for multi-day events. Next, please. And the, I guess that's the end of that. Let me go on for a little bit. You may know the gun club purchased a substantial piece of land west of Fairchild Air Force Base after the sale of their previous land. It was next to Medical Lake Cemetery. The cemetery filed an appeal over their use. That appeal was upheld by the court, and they cannot use that land for shooting and archery or a shooting range. So they are looking for another solution. In trying to provide clarity, they asked for this definition. The Planning Commission went through a lengthy study of best practices for shooting ranges around the country, around the state. looked at setting aside some setback areas, half a mile from an incorporated area with buffering and range safety up to 2 miles, but had none of that. The applicant was not supportive of those setbacks. They had their attorney submit a legal opinion that the state or the legislative entities like the county could not impose a noise limit on a shooting range. Our council looked at that and said they might have been cherry picking into the statutes a little bit. And so we do not have a legal agreement. And so that's the single reason we're asking you to continue this, so we can study their claim as well as ours in terms of moving this forward. There is significant support for having shooting sports and shooting ranges for safety and issues, but it's a question of not to be too flippant about it, it's a little bit of a NIMBY issue. Where should this go? Where would it have the least amount of impact? And so we're trying to provide some guidance on how that would happen. So we're going to have to study it from the legal side and come to an agreement so we can give you a solid recommendation. So next one, ZTA 01-24. You've heard about this before. This is a constituent-driven application to have small-scale meat processing facilities in rural Spokane County. As we explored this, there was great support from our ranchers and farmers for doing this. We came to the conclusion that because they wanted not just to have the processing facility, but to be able to sell their packaged meats at retail, that they would have to use the USDA criteria rather than the State Department of Agriculture criteria. We tested that with some of the applicants and supporters, and they were fine with that. So it will have to require USDA regulation. And next slide, please. This will be allowed in our ag, small tract, large tract ag and rural traditional zones, but not allowed in the urban reserve, rural conservation, or the remaining R5. So it provides quite a lot of flexibility for where it goes. Next slide, please. And these are the criteria by which if the conditional use would be granted. It lays in some distances. It talks about distances from residential development, preserving and protecting water. Next, please. Various things. One important one is to keep the scale manageable. Not that horrible or somebody's gonna come in and produce an old style slaughterhouse yard. This by saying it can't have a feedlot attached to it simply reduces the scale of how big it could grow in a practical. It's only going to be meat or animals that can be processed pretty much in a day or overnight rather than a big old stockyard of some kind. So this has significant support and is being recommended for your action unanimously by the Planning Commission. Next, please. This one you've seen a little bit of before and acted earlier in the year to create a letter stating that we would do this zoning text amendment, and now it's back here in the cycle. This is simply the one that allows for extended temporary uses. And you'll see in the next slide where previously temporary uses were allowed for 6 months with a 6-month extension. And what we're doing here is recognizing that many of the folks in the 2 main fire areas may need more time, maybe significantly more time to rebuild. Next slide, please. And so what we've done is taken that out and simply said, we're going to make it a 12-month extension with annual extensions granted administratively as necessary. And necessary is going to be, I would say, very liberally received. If somebody just simply says, I'm not ready yet, can I keep this? That would be something to do. So it simply gives us that kind of flexibility. Yes.
I'd like to suggest that you reach out to a couple housing lenders and make sure that this language is strong enough for them to be able to lend money, because some of these, and I'm thinking predominantly with the Oregon fire than I am the Gray fire, they're gonna be, they're owner built. And the bank is going to be looking for timely turnover on this. And if they only have a year to permit for their structure, then the bank might not be willing to lend money if it's subject to an application that says it might or might not be approved. So just to confirm, you know, that they will, one, understand and work with homeowners, that, you know, if the bank is saying, well, we really want them to, you know, have 18 months or 2 years, be able to make sure that they're going to perform, then we should reflect that so that we're really helping them, kind of a deal.
Okay, we will do that. It would, again, a little bit like the comp plan amendments, it would be your choice to either continue this or act on it, and we could maybe amend it again next year if this was not satisfactory. But either way.
Yeah.
So we'll take a look and see what we can find.
Yeah, I just don't know. It's been a while since I've gotten residential financing, but I do know that some of the lenders get pretty persnickety about permits and stuff, so just want to make sure that we're trying to fix something, we actually fix it.
Good detail. Thank you. We'll take that. Next, please. This is another constituent-driven amendment with widespread support, and it's the idea of allowing similar events that are now in small tract ag only. In other words, the Green Bluff events or weddings and gatherings to exist in other parts of rural Spokane County. This has gone through several analyses. One option is to allow this in the rural traditional areas, which we will show you as we kind of go on here a little bit. Another would be a conditional use process that would allow it in different areas, but with specific conditions on a site-by-site basis. Next, please. So these are kind of the basics of what we're asking about. Next, please. And so this was one of the proposed uses of renewable zoning certificate, like the temporary use that exists in Green Bluff. That's essentially an annual renewal. Some of which actually renew and some of which sort of ignore us, but that process exists up there. Next, please. And so we're looking at those conditions on where they may be, what kinds of zones they would be. Next, please. This would be the scope of where that could exist in the county. The map on the left is the small tract ag zone. You can see the clear Green Bluff area and then the northeast area around Deer Park. The map on the right is the rural traditional zone, which these would be far more extensive in the county to offer that opportunities. And now the next slide is the latest, wrench in the gear. There's, literally 2 days before the Planning Commission was going to hold its public hearing to send this forward, we received a Supreme Court decision on a similar project in King County, normally right in the Woodinville area, particularly about wineries and brew pubs wanting to expand and have more year-round uses. The FutureWise challenged the county's ordinance at the Growth Management Hearings Board. The Growth Management Hearings Board agreed with FutureWise that this involved taking land out of ag production, which was protected by the Growth Management Act. And so they denied the application, or they upheld the FutureWise's appeal. King County appealed the Hearings Board decision. The appeal court overruled the Hearings Board. Subsequently, it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court reinstated the Hearing Board decision. And so what we're, and because FutureWise was the plaintiff on this, we recognize that if we took our ordinance forward with this same ruling, we would be under the same scrutiny immediately. And so we put it off for future consideration. That said, there are some distinctions here. One is if we take the CUP process off the table and restrict it only to rural traditional lands, those are not resource lands. They're not protected by GMA per se. And if we put some other criteria on here, I think there's a path through the woods where Spokane County can do this and not be sued by an organization. However, we haven't fully, I mean, I've read through the decision a couple of times. I've got a pretty good feel for it, but we haven't really gone through it in detail to see, you know, how far does it get into these use changes. So we're simply asking to push this one off into next year, and maybe not even to next year, at least for our study, with, you know, our sort of personal commitment that the people who are waiting on this decision want some clarity early as possible. And we would like to provide that clarity, you know, by the end of the year and maybe an action before you early on in January. So like I said, we see a possible path through here. But we just, the risks right now, if we act too fast, you know, we all know FutureWise watches everything that comes out of our shop, and you know, we would be instantly appealed. So, okay, next please. And this is just another summary of the decision. Next please. Lastly, we have the utility scale wind power facilities, and we're going to defer that because we have a longer discussion scheduled with you next week on November 4th as part of your strategic planning discussions. What we'll be bringing back to you is expanded research that we've found since we last talked to you. We'll bring back all of the public comments that we've received. We've held 3 workshops before the Planning Commission, and so we've got quite a lot of comments, and we'll have a much broader discussion about how to move this forward. Next, please.
And I'll just say on that, I mean, Wasac, we're working on kind of this right now too, which we won't, we have a meeting on the 18th in Vancouver. A subcommittee meeting to work through, so we have more happening too.
Yep, we've been in touch with Wasac and through Joe in the assessor's office. We've talked with some assessors that are going through the whole taxing income, the taxing.
Right, which is what we're looking at Wasac.
You know, those revenue impacts.
The letters that have been submitted, I know early on, they were trending very, very negative toward doing this. Has it shifted at all, or is it still predominantly negative in terms of the idea?
No, we've at the last couple of workshops, we've had several landowners who have signed agreements with power companies saying they want this to move forward quickly. They want to be able to get this moving quickly. So there are the power companies are being persuasive with landowners.
Okay. Interesting.
They want to move the ordinance forward quickly, or their project? What do you mean by that?
They want to move their project forward. And so we're back, in a sense, we're at that same stage of if Spokane County's code is totally silent on this, they will simply go to the State Facilities Commission directly. If the board adopts some code, they can choose to go locally, they can choose to go to the state. More likely they would choose to start here because it would be there. But that it gives us something to point to as public policy decided by you. If it goes to the state council, we can look back on this and say, here's how Spokane County wants to handle this. And one of the things we'll have for you next week is also the first cut of a map with some of the basic setback criteria that we've studied and seen, and what that looks like in terms of what would be allowable in prohibited areas, that give you kind of a scale of where this might go. Next, please. And that's all we have for you. You can see there something we found in our office a little while ago. That is the First, Spokane County Planning Commission. Sitting down to do their work.
I'm the one on the left.
So commissioners, thank you. Like I said, we'll be back with an extended wind briefing next week. Risk of saying, we'll try not to have too much hot air, but we'll try to be thorough. But thank you for your consideration on the plan amendments and the other zoning amendments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to the end of our agenda, which is long over. So miscellaneous items.
I distributed this letter 2 weeks ago. And so you guys wanted to look at it and see whether you wanted to weigh in or not. If you do, great. If you don't, great. I'm going to sign it and send it off myself. But if we're going to do it as a board, we need to be timely. Otherwise, time walks out away from us. So anyway, just need to know which way to go. There's a bill going before the Senate that would basically alter the way that credit card companies can engage in a point program with their customers. And this would dramatically cut back on the benefits associated with using credit cards for, for travel packages, per points, all that. It would dramatically cut back on that. And so there's a citizen group that's encouraging the Senate not to pass the bill and to have the credit card companies continue with the programs. And so the Senate's going to take an action one way or the other. And so that's what the letter is about, is encouraging senators not to support the Credit Card Competition Act and continue to provide the service to the customers.
Reducing the points.
Yep. It reduces and this is being supported by, a local group that is concerned about the impact on the tourism industry to the state of Washington, because it will significantly cut back on people that will travel because they won't have the points, and for either hotels and or airfare and stuff. And so they see this as a negative to the state of Washington.
I did take a look at it. I have a lot of questions on it at this point. It looks like it's a bill that's sponsored by Senator Vance of Ohio and Durbin of Illinois. So it's interesting that it's a bipartisan bill. It's the stated goal is to try to increase competition among credit card companies, which in theory is stated that it would try to reduce credit card fees at vendors and transactions. And it sounds like the credit card industry is saying that if they had less revenue because there was more competition, they would then eliminate or reduce their benefit programs, which is a threat. That's a statement that they have about the impact of it. So I think personally, I'm not very comfortable signing off on it, because it seems like at this point, there's tension, or it's a fight between the banks versus vendors who benefit from these transactions but may like to see more competition. So I think it's a little bit unclear whether that's or what the truth of those claims is. Not saying I have a firm view on it. There's too many questions in my mind to sign it.
I don't know, signing. I'm concerned on, yes, consumers. So, I think I follow travel blog, and he was not in favor of it. either. I was just kind of making sure it was that same one, but can we each just send a letter in?
Can each do it if you want. I mean, that's whatever. It was presented me to bring to the board. I brought it to the board. I've done my part. I'm letting you know, I'm gonna sign it. I'm gonna sign it on behalf of consumers. And, you know, having watched credit card companies and watched banks, yes, they want to reduce their cost and they never reduce their fees. And so, you know, that for me is a history, and I don't have a problem signing the letter at all. I'll just remove you guys' names and I'll sign it and send it off. I'm fine with that.
Well, no, I'm happy to sign it. I just.
Yeah, no,
But if we're not signing it all five.
Yeah.
How,
Yeah, Madam Chair,
how do we do that?
if they're gonna individually send it, it's on board letterhead, you'll have your own individual
I'll
letterhead.
just change the letterhead.
No, my point is but if a majority of the board are gonna sign it, we can just put the three that will sign it on the back, and you could make a motion now and get comment on it, if you will, Commissioner CUNY, and then you could sign it now, if you have a majority, Commissioner French. So whatever you'd like to do.
Whatever be the pleasure of the board.
Why don't you two sign it? Then you don't need a vote, you don't need
That's fine.
two of you sign it.
Well,
It's
but
not, that's not a
But
majority of
if
the
it's
board,
not
that's not.
left, we can't put on, we'll put on their individual letter.
yeah,
You can do a letterhead with the county logo with just two signatures on it, right?
well, usually in the board letterhead usually speaks that the full board's gonna sign
Okay,
the
so
majority
we
of
can
the
just
board.
Use it as my, mine and L.
That's
at the
correct,
top.
Commissioner, you could do
It's
that.
all good.
Just have it
Yes.
set up that way.
No action required, Commissioners, you're correct.
I'll let Victoria make the change. Okay.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Janice, sure. Is that for tomorrow?
We just got notice, yesterday actually, that the Shrek transition team meeting is canceled for this afternoon.
Okay.
Sounds like the city had a number of people. Yeah. So it's off our calendars.
Anything else?
So, this is not an action item. This is an FYI. Are you open to an FYI?
This finance?
So, last Thursday.
Send my name.
This would be quick. Last Thursday, Friday, attended the quarterly CRAB board meeting. And as part of the presentation to CRAB, you know, when you look at the motor vehicle fuel tax, the gas tax, over many iterations, there's certain parts of it that go to ferries, certain parts of it go to the county, and yada, yada, yada. And that apportionment is all done by the treasurer's office. We've discovered that going back as far as almost 20 years, the treasury has been shortchanging counties. They have apportioned out money that goes to the ferry counties, which is Skagit and Island County. But the monies that are supposed to go to regular counties has been shortchanged to the tune of $106 million. And so we, CRAB is making a request of the AG to have a forensic accountant group come in and validate our numbers and then pay us our money for Spokane County. And I advised Matt Zierkor about this on Friday, but for Spokane County, it could mean anywhere from $12 to $15 million as an increase to the road fund. While it would be
Over time?
well, it's due and payable when when the dollar amount is ratified by the AG's office. So it should be paid at one time because it's taxes in the rears. It's not future. This is money that we are owed by the state and stuff. And so it might end up being a hit on WashDOT. It might be a hit on the state general fund, but one way or the other, and they've got to, you know, by statute, by constitution, you got to make the road fund whole. And so, but going through all of that process is probably going to take some time, so we're not anticipating that there'd be a disbursement in 25. But there clearly should be at the end of 25, 26 disbursement to the counties. And it would be done on the same pro rata share that all the other taxes for the motor vehicle fuel taxes apportioned on. So based upon that, we got the highest number of road miles in any county in the state. We're seventh population wide. We should be somewhere in that $12 to $15 million range in terms of a nice hit to the county. So just wanted you to be aware that this dialogue is going on and more to come, but based upon the original or the initial work done by Brad, it looks like we're sitting in a pretty good chance to get a nice hit for the road fund.
Okay, just a couple of FYIs. I just want to share for the board's awareness, you probably saw the story over the weekend about various elected officials and councils and commissions responding to the GSI Pulse survey. I know we had two commissioners quoted, the chair and Commissioner Jordan. There's some ongoing question and answer going back with a few reporters. The chair and I were in touch on Friday and got most of those answered. But I do expect that trend will continue as there's more kind of analysis of that Pulse survey. There's also GSI's got coming up, I think November 1st or 2nd, some kind of briefing. If you want to deep dive into the poll, if you haven't had that yet. But anyways, that was out there. I did talk with the auditor this morning. There were some reports out of Portland and Vancouver of arson of a ballot box, 2 ballot boxes. Number of ballots were seen burning, drop boxes. And so we'll be working with the auditor on any media requests that come in, but just anticipate with the election, how people are voting, are their ballots safe and secure. She's been doing quite a bit of local media on that. So just for awareness that's happened. Back to the GSI Pulse survey. I don't know if it's connected to that or not, but Martha Lou flagged me. There's some sort of demonstration at City Hall tonight that we were hearing about on social media. And I don't know if we'll get, I think it's mostly city related, whether we'll get any questions on it or not. Nothing saying that it's pertaining to a demonstration at the county campus, but just for an FYI. And then tomorrow is the big day. We have the Bigelow ribbon cutting. We have a number of special guests who you'll want to be there to greet beforehand. Ribbon cutting at 11. We have identified a location very close to Bigelow, right on the edge of Bigelow. A private property owner who has a small business is hosting us. And so the Johnsons, very gracious. We looked at a number of different sites, but that's the one that fit all of our criteria. So we'll be there at 11. I think folks will wrap up here according to Gina, and you all get out there with time. We do have, I think Mark Lou said 3 or 4 dozen guests confirmed. So we expect there'll be more. I know the Chamber of Commerce in the Valley has invited quite a few, but we'll have all the elected officials that you all invited. We invited. We did get an RCE in confirmation from Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers. So she'll be there. We might get 1 or 2 other state legislators and dignitaries.
And I've been asked to fill in for Tib, Ben, Sib, and Brad, because it doesn't look like the leadership for all 3 of those is going to be here, even though we received quite a bit of money for all 3 of them and stuff. So they asked if I would mind saying a few words on their behalf.
Okay. Have you let Martha Lee know that?
I did. I did.
Perfect.
We'll also have a press release after the event going out, and I know we're expecting media there. The final thing I'll say is Operation Greenlight is set and ready to go. We will have the display case updated in the Public Works building with employees who are veterans. And according to Veteran Services, we should have a number of veterans in attendance. We're getting a list in case the chair would like to call them up or recognize them, or just generally thank the attendees who are there. But they'll be there for the presentation as well to be invited up.
What time is that tomorrow?
2 o'clock. It's at your 2 o'clock meeting, the proclamation of voting.
The proclamation.
Right.
And then Monday is
Yes, the 4th.
the official.
Yes, and I think we had chair designated Al to read the resolution, excuse me, Commissioner French.
Today or Monday?
Next Tuesday or tomorrow at the 2 o'clock, we have the resolution for you to read. So we'll get your copy in advance.
And then Monday, the 4th at 5 o'clock.
Yes, they will light up. There's not a ceremony, but as at nightfall, the courthouse will be lit up in green. Of course, Operation Green Lights encouraging businesses and residents to light up their homes green for the 4th through the 11th.
And we do meet tomorrow morning still here before we go to the river.
Yes, we'll be meeting here and then we will, we need to be done. I think we have it at 10:10, just because Martha Lou was kind of getting a little nervous. Instead of 10:15, trying to be done. And I will try to make sure we are done at that point in time to get out of here. So that is the plan, is that I'll try to keep the agenda moving along, so we are out at 10:10.
You should see a motorcycle deputy if we've been successful on where you need to turn off. So
Okay.
Will there be a motorcycle escort for us getting up there?
there'll be one after the event. The
one?
motorcycles are gonna take cars onto the roadway for the first drive, even though the highway's been open for a little bit.
Similar to what they did with 395. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I think we'll have some vintage cars, at least 1 or 2 of those.
It's really funny passing the state trooper on the road.
No,
I did.
he's not joking.
I'm not joking.
He's
I
not
did.
joking. When they opened a section of the north-south, the road was closed. It was a section that was kind of near Highway 2, Newport Highway. We were all under an overpass and then we all got in our cars and drove to get, and you come up over the ridge. And no joke, there was a state trooper there on a motorcycle who was radaring. I saw it and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding. It's like, this road is, it's like, so he had to have driven backward, against the flow of traffic to get where he was at. Cause the road was closed and it's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Okay, so with
Need that
that,
money.
we will adjourn our meeting for the morning.